Hey, folks, thanks for joining me for this episode of the Embellish Podcast, a podcast focused solely on product stories, product storytellers, and interesting brand ambassadors, or any other tangent that I happen to come up with. Whether you're a bourbon fan, a geek, a casual observer, or someone just floating through this channel, you're sure to waste a few minutes listening to what I have to say, and I hope you find it interesting. If you got here by chance, please take a moment to hit the subscribe button. I can be found on any podcasting platform that exists, and if you can't find me on a platform, send me an email at embellishpod@gmail.com, and I'll try to get that taken care of. Also generally live stream the recording of these episodes on YouTube on Wednesday nights, usually at 7:30, sometimes at 9:30, sometimes on Sunday, just whenever it sort of happens. You can find all of my links on Instagram at embellishpod or Twitter with the same handle. I have a website. It is www.embellishpod.com. That is also a place to pick up these links, episode details, one-off tasting notes, any type of contact information you're looking for. Today is March the 23rd, and since March is Women's Appreciation Month, we are talking about to and with Morgan from Female Whiskey Society. Before we get too far, I just want everyone to marinate on the fact that societally we've screwed up to the extent that we needed to make amends by saying we're going to celebrate women for a month. Mm-hmm. And when we made this decision, it was like, all right, we named a month for women. We're doing this. We're even. And like that's sort of depressing that we got to this place. But thank you for joining me. I will tell you ahead of time, I take notes. And so while you're talking, if you see me looking down, I'm writing down like, oh, I want to follow back and ask this question, because I'll put together a list of questions. Then I'll hear something you say. I'm like, hey, let's go back and talk about that a little more. So I'm not ignoring you. I'm actually writing notes. I use an inordinate amount of post. This is what I do at work too. This is this exact same process. It's usually just a littered desk full of post-it notes. But about a year ago, I did an episode specifically around women in whiskey, and I'd posted something on social media about trying to get a decent list of where to even start. And you were the first person that reached out and said, hey, here's some things. And I truly appreciate that. So, of course, I had to include you in that. And so I actually talked about you about a year ago on an episode of my podcast. I don't know if I ever told you that or not. And also, we've never interacted in face-to-face before. But we've had
a person doesn't exist anymore. But yeah.
Right, well, yeah, in a virtual sense, like everyone else is having to work and do everything. But your first post as Female Whiskey Society on Instagram was in January of 2021. A little over a year later, you have over 6,000 followers, I think, is what I saw this afternoon. And I'm a big Office fan, so I'm going to try to get this right. I don't know if you ever watched The Office at all, but so it brings me to two questions. Who do you think you are, and what gives you the right?
Who do I think I am, and what gives me the right? I have no idea. I'm just here for a good time. And, and to go back on what you started with, Women's History Month and only getting 30 days or 31 days, however many days are in March. It's funny because it's like, well, why do we even need a month? And why do I even need to have this page? And really, I don't want there to be a need to have this page. But until I feel that like I've made enough of a difference in this realm, I'm going to keep it. And maybe, and I hope that there's one day where you don't need to have societies where it's just like one slice of a pie of people where they feel like that's the place they can go to be comfortable. Then, until we're there, I think they have to exist. They have to exist.
Yeah. And, it's a special interest group that is based off of something that is just a part of who you are shouldn't have to exist. You're exactly right.
Right.
We should be able to have just a whiskey society, but I mean, I've been around this long enough to also know there's a lot of exclusivity, and being the stereotypical white male in America, I have all the things afforded to me that a lot of people don't.
Right. Yeah, especially being in Kentucky too. You have like just direct access to the hub of this industry and this hobby. And I've gotten some flack from actually quite a few people even locally here. And it's, well, there shouldn't be any division of male and female and this and that. And it's like, until I come and meet a woman who says, gosh, because of you, I felt a little bit more comfortable going into the bar and ordering a drink, or I, walked into a liquor store and felt more confident and understanding what I like to drink, and knowing I could just walk in there, get my bottle and leave. Or saying, I'm getting less and less comments, or I don't get those comments that I used to, then clearly there's still work to be done. And clearly there's a need for this group to exist. But it's not just a place where women can come, because my page on Instagram is obviously open to everybody. Anybody is, I share, posts and stories from people all over the whiskey world. So that's not just for women. So that's kind of just like the more like let your hair down, have a good time, meet friends, network. And then the Facebook page is the only thing that I have that's exclusive to women. And for me, it's just like, you're sitting around with your girlfriends and you can kind of talk about stuff without, or, even your guy friends, you just talk about stuff and, you're on the same page. And, there's going to be people who know a lot more than you, a lot less than you, who have different walks of life. And if anyone's been on those Facebook pages, national bourbon pages, whiskey pages, I don't care what you are, male, female,
noxious,
army, vet, it doesn't matter. I feel like it's a dog eat dog, and people are cutthroat and they're so quick to judge. And it's very difficult to be a woman on those pages because, and I come from before whiskey, my husband and I are really into cars, and it's the same thing in the car world. Women in the car world are either expected, if they're in it, that they know everything and they're an expert on every part of the industry, or they're just there to use their body to sell it. And I think it's the same in the car world as it is in the whiskey world. And I'm not either of those things. I'm not an expert. And I sure as heck am not using myself to sell a damn thing. That's not my style. That's not how I work. That's not my interest. So it's like, there's got to be a place in between where women can just go and say, hey, should I buy this, Old Forester, this Four Roses? Or can anyone tell me more about mash bills? Those types of things. Because I don't freaking know either. So, and so it's just like a great place where it's just, there's no bullshit. There's no disrespect. People don't judge you. If they do, don't do it openly into your face. And it's just way more chill.
Yeah. And it's always going to be important for groups like that to exist. And whether it is gender based or any other thing, like, whiskey people are assholes. Like, you were talking about like
are assholes. But people in general are assholes.
Yeah.
You put them behind a computer screen where they can be anybody they want, and they have access to Google and to have the answer to everything and quick rebuttal so quickly. Yep. I mean, you can be whoever you want on the internet.
It's a cesspool. It becomes a cesspool really, really, really fast. And, curating a group to allow people to feel comfortable regardless of what their segment is, like you said it right just a second ago. It's a hobby, and you're trying to make it as enjoyable as you possibly can and feel like there's no barriers to entry, whether the hobby is whiskey or cars or playing tennis or whatever thing that you're into. What's the barrier to entry, and how do you limit those things?
Right. Yeah. And, I've had a lot of conversations with, people in social media, whether you want to call them influencers or what. And, they talk about like the drama that kind of surrounds being in this space. And it's like, my paycheck doesn't come from here. It doesn't come from whiskey. I would love to work in the industry at some point, but right now this is a hobby. And I think people that it is a hobby, they have to remember that at the end of the day, it should be fun, and you should be able just to walk away. And because what did we all start this for? It's around a spirit that we love to sit around and enjoy, figure out more about, find what we like, go on hunts for bottles. It should be fun. And the moment something isn't fun anymore, I think you have to take a step back and reevaluate why you're even doing it.
You've taken a hobby, you've turned it into a job, and you may not even make $1 from it.
Right.
The entire reason I started what I'm doing is because I wanted to eventually be able to have conversations with people. I was like, I'm gonna sit in a room by myself and talk into the empty void for a year. to feel comfortable. And then whenever I complete that year of solitary confinement, then we'll say, hey, let's talk to people, because this is what whiskey is largely about, and making sure that you try to provide a voice that is not the same as what a lot of whiskey becomes. But you said in there influencer, and I think technically you are one now. If by definition, if your following is large enough and you're able to convince people to purchase things,
I could sell anything. I could sell anything to anybody. So
I mean, you can sell things, you know.
Like, I can sell some things. Well, I could sell a bit more 3-chord.
Well, you know, we'll obviously try to push the opportunity for that. That's sitting over here at this point.
I'm going to be buried with it. It's fine.
It's gonna be an heirloom that you can pass down to your child. Like, this is
it's gonna be the favor at my funeral.
Right. It's like, thank you for showing up. Here's your bottle of 3-chord or whatever.
This is Morgan's legacy.
So you mentioned cars as well. Like, what? There's a similar question for how did you get into whiskey. I had a question about cars too, because I stalk the Instagram pages to find out what I need to ask about. How did you get into cars? Like, where does that come from?
Childhood. I was born into it. My dad was a huge car fanatic, still is. I grew up in Flint, Michigan. I mean, Detroit's Motor City, but Flint is where we made it all. And so I grew up in cars. My dad he was contracted by GM. He was a car hauler. All of my aunts and uncles all worked for General Motors in some fashion. Cars is why my family was in Michigan. My grandparents came from Tennessee because my grandfather was offered a job at GM. So it's the reason why I'm in Michigan to begin with. But my dad was really into NASCAR growing up. And I remember doing my first oil change at 5. And the first sentence I ever said, first whole entire sentence I ever said was, Dale Earnhardt dropped a cylinder, which is, if you know anything about cars, it's a very unique thing to happen. And very odd for a very young child to say that.
Right. But that's not a normal phrase. Yeah. I mean, I live in the middle of nowhere. Like, I'm in Western Kentucky and rural borderlines, South. I'm yes.
Yeah. So it's kind of always been, I've been around cars since, I was very young. Excuse me. So it's just, how I grew up. And I have a brother and an older sister, and my brother was never interested. Obviously, my dad was like, I'm going to get my son into all these things. He's going to play sports and he's going to work on cars. And he had no interest at all. Mm-hmm. And my sister was so much older, she didn't give a shit. So I got wrangled into all of it. So I went to the races, and, I was stuck in the garage working with him when nobody else wanted to be out there. So I was handing the tools over, and the apprentice, I helped him paint a couple of cars before. So kind of did it all.
So you've helped paint, you've changed oil, you've helped turn wrenches, but you say you don't know. You sort of alluded like you don't really know that much about cars. It sort of sounds like you do know that much about cars.
I mean, I could do a couple of things, but I prefer not to.
Right. Well, I mean, we're all in that place, like if I can get to the point where I don't have to do my own oil change and I can pay another human being to do it, that makes my life simpler, and I can go do something, different or whatever. You said your family's from Tennessee and you guys went to Michigan for work. Like half of my family lives in and around Detroit for that exact reason. They were from here in Western Kentucky and they migrated up. Some of them came back and some of them did not. And so I'm familiar with that migration pattern. So same exact question. Like, where do you get into whiskey? Like, how does that happen? A kid from Michigan who is into cars. I mean, I can see a direct line maybe, but
no, my parents didn't drink growing up. It was not a childhood thing. If they did, it was like beer, and that was it. I didn't get into whiskey until 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
COVID, I would have a whiskey cocktail, things like that. But COVID hit and we were confined to our home, and, just a cocktail wasn't cutting it. So then it started being, whiskey on ice, and then that wasn't working either. So, at that time we had a 3-year-old son, and he wasn't going to school anymore. And we're both, working from home, and I'm in the medical distribution sector. So I was the most busy I've ever been in my entire life when lockdown happened. So I was working morning, noon, and night, getting things from China, from other countries, selling as much as I could to customers. So it was not, so I just needed to drink more. I needed more. And then it very quickly spiraled out of control. We bought a house a year ago, August, and it had this huge bar in the basement. It's like, well, we got to put something in it. So November of 2021, it was our first time we went to Kentucky. And I've probably been, with work and, in personal travel, I've probably been like 25 times since November of 2021.
Yeah, I saw you posted a picture on Instagram specifically about that. Like sort of your travel patterns, I guess, maybe last year.
Yeah.
At what point do you end up just like, okay, we've got to get like an apartment or a second home in Kentucky? Because like it's a straight line from like Michigan to Kentucky with like one outlier to New York.
Yep. Yeah. So I couldn't live full time in Kentucky. I just my company actually we moved our distribution outside of Louisville back in July, which is mostly why I was there. I was there almost the entire summer. I think I went probably 10 times. And I just, it's not home. I enjoy visiting, but it's just, places are home. It's not home. We've talked about buying a house to do like an Airbnb. So we'd have like our own space to come to, but those are just ideas for right now. But maybe
and then you're like, then you've gone from hobby to like a pretty deep commitment if you're trying to find a place to stay in Kentucky so you can be here more regularly.
I think there's such a need too, because of how rural parts of Kentucky are. There's no real great places to stay, and certain cities only have a couple of hotels, and they're not great.
Like Bardstown specifically. Bardstown specifically is the worst for a place to stay, and being the hub of bourbon is terrible.
And then when those two hotels are sold out, the closest thing is Elizabethtown, and it's like, it's too far. Like if you're drinking, you don't want to travel that far. It's not safe.
No, because there's also not an opportunity for an Uber or a Lyft or a taxi cab that doesn't feel like you're going to get Hepe from it.
No, but that's pretty standard around the country.
Right. But I mean, like maybe, well, I guess maybe you're not going to end up with some meth dust on you. Is that maybe more appropriate? That's where it lands. But.
Yeah. So that's kind of what we're thinking. We'll see where that goes. It's just an idea for now, but I think there's a lot of opportunity, and I don't think the bourbon tourism is slowing down anytime soon. And so I think it's a great time to get involved in things like that because there's so much opportunity.
You're not wrong. Bourbon tourism, I don't remember exactly what the number was, but I know 2021 was the biggest year for bourbon tourism, and that's with half the year not being able to travel, right? Like that's with half the year of people not being there. Everybody's ready to get back out.
Some of the biggest distilleries weren't opened. Like Jim Beam wasn't open until what ended up being like late November.
Right.
So with all the distilleries opening back up, people just still not wanting to travel in general. 2022, I think, is just going to be record numbers. Yeah. Especially the summer when people by the summer, things are already getting back to normal. But by the summer, travel is going to be if people can afford to drive anywhere, travel is going to be through the roof.
Well, I think people will make a way to afford to drive because they're just tired of being at home. I mean, you touched on it, like, I went into COVID with maybe 15 or 20 bottles, and I came out of COVID quarantine with far more than that. And just because
maybe 30.
It's like, well, all the money I'm saving on gas and going out to eat lunch whenever I go to the office, I can spend that on whiskey now or do something else. It's a problem,
Yeah, we're the same way. I think that first trip. So the first time I ever bought bourbon, it was for Ian's birthday, and I wanted to go to the liquor store and get him something nice. I knew not one thing. I had no idea what I was doing. And so I went in, and the guy asked what I was looking for, because they do that thing. I hate when they put it behind the counter. So I look like a freak staring at the wall, and they're staring at you. And it's like, I don't know what to do with my hands. Like,
you got to stand there and stare, and they're like, which one do you want? I don't know. I'm still looking at the labels. They're too far. My old eyes don't work.
this was, I think, May of 2020. So it was right in the middle of quarantine when liquor stores were like the only thing open. So I'm like, I'll get him some bourbon. So I go in and I'm staring and he's staring at me and I'm staring at the wall. And he's like, well, what are you thinking? And I'm like, I don't know. I want to get my husband something nice for his birthday. And I was like, we just had to cancel a trip to Thailand, Bali, and Taipei. Like, we're both down in the dumps. Like, I need something nice. And he's like, well, we have some of, this. And he showed me a bottle of Basil Hayden's. And I was like, okay. He goes, it's a little softer, a little bit smoother, sweeter. And I was like, okay, whatever. I was like, okay, I'll take that. But the thing is I'm used to like bottles of beer and more so scotches, as far as like very popular, like Johnny Walker, Blue and things like that. So I'm used to like $200-$300 bottles. Like when I say I want to go in and spend a lot of money, there's like, here's a $300 bottle of wine or Johnny Walker Blue or something. So I was like, it's like $60 or whatever it was. I'm like, do you have something nicer?
Right.
And he's like, oh, we have this bottle here. He goes, but it's really hot. So it's really hot, spicy, and it's got some proof to it. And I was like, oh, that sounds like it's for me. I said, so I'll take it. And it was Booker's Country Ham. Or no, I'm sorry, Booker's Beaten Biscuits. Gotcha. It was Beaten Biscuits. And who would have known that Booker's—
That's the start. That's where it all begins. That's where it all
turn out to be my most favorite. Booker's would be my most favorite, but so I took it home and he was very excited because we were still both, new to the journey. And I end up just plowing through that Booker's.
And that Booker's is not the one you want to plow through because it is proofy.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I just fell in love. And at that time, I think I was still doing the ice cube. But gosh, I drank it so fast and then it was over. But yeah, so, and now you have to play like hell to find Booker's on the shelf anywhere.
There's somebody in here commenting about the biscuits specifically. We've got a gentleman in the chat here that apparently enjoyed the biscuits. Your husband's in the chat.
Oh, he's enjoying the biscuits.
Yeah. And that's a problem with, I think, at least with whiskey and specifically, like you probably get it at this point now where somebody's like, hey, I'm thinking about going out and I want to buy a good, expensive bottle of whiskey, and trying to start with the bottle is the wrong way. My boss said, hey, I want some inexpensive whiskey to serve at my daughter's wedding. I was like, what's inexpensive mean? Is that like 0 to 10, 10 to 20, 20 to 30, 30 to 40? Where's the number? And he was like, well, I never thought about it. Like, you tell me that, then I'll tell you what's good in that range. And that's, probably where that guy failed you, because I don't know how you start with Basil Hayden's unless he was just assessing, hey, this is a woman. She doesn't really know what she wants. I'm going to sell her this. And then it kind of goes all the way back to the beginning of the conversation of this is why these groups have to exist.
Yeah. And I will say, I feel like generally I personally have been treated very respectfully out there in the world, in situations in person. But it is funny, like you pick up on things that I would assume that men don't normally pick up on. So then sometimes women feel like, oh, I'm reading too much into the situation, or maybe I'm being sensitive. But, we've gone into liquor stores together and, they've offered to let us both, being with Ian, let us both try, like, it was a barrel pick for a liquor store, and it was being proofed down, but the samples they had were at barrel strength. And he was like, hey, do you guys want some samples? And he gave Ian a sample, and then he turns to me, and goes, oh, I'll go get a bottle of water so I can put it in the whiskey. And I was like, no, that's okay. I don't need water. It's like 115 proof.
Right. Listen, man, I started with Booker's.
Yeah, right. And it's like, okay, I think my mouthwash is stronger than this, but whatever. So it's just, it's little things like that. And now, I went out with some girlfriends a couple weekends ago, and we went to a bar that's very well known for having an extensive bourbon list. And my first pour was a Stag Junior. And then after that, the bartender was talking to a guy a few seats down, and he had a bottle of E.H. Taylor barrel proof. And the guy was hemming and hawing about getting, he didn't want to start with it, and, thought maybe it was a little expensive. But it's like, I haven't seen E.H. Taylor barrel proof on a shelf somewhere. It's like, I don't give, like, in a really long time.
Right.
I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, before you go, can I have a glass of that? And the guy who was asking about it turns to me, and the bartender walked away because he went to go pour my glass. And he goes, do you know what that is? And I was like, I don't even know what that question is. Do you like?
It's obviously alcohol of some type. I'm here to purchase this, but yeah,
it's very just odd the things people like think are okay to say, and it's like, but it doesn't come off as like a genuine like, oh my gosh, isn't that really cool? They have E.H. Taylor barrel proof. It's like, do you even know what that is? And it's like, no, please tell me, what is it? It's like,
please inform me of all of the things. I was like,
I just finished a glass of Stag Junior. That's E.H. Taylor barrel proof. I could probably tell you the proof point, where it was made. But did you see the warehouse C that they have? But it's like that thing. It's like you almost feel like you have to flex a little bit or show that
you have to prove your chops.
You don't have to.
Right.
And even I get caught up in that, where it's like, well, now I need to show you that I know what I'm. It's not a pissing contest.
But for so many people, it is like that's that's what goes back to the like whiskey people are obnoxious because it very much can become a giant pissing contest with the wrong types of people.
Yeah, and it's the same thing where people ask like how many bottles we have, and it's like, well, it doesn't really matter. But also remember, you have two people that are really obsessed with this hobby who have nothing to do except for buy alcohol. So. I mean, it doesn't matter. Plus, it's not a competition.
Yeah. What is your reason for asking? Are you just interested in people who hoard things? Because that's a conversation I can have. Yeah. I'm obviously a hoarder. You know, anybody with more than about 40 bottles is probably a hoarder of some type. It may be just organized. If you've got a spreadsheet, you're just an organized hoarder, and that's okay. But yeah, no, it's a terrible question. It's a terrible question.
And I get some people are purely interested, but I just worry that for some people getting started out, it's just like need to keep up. And I don't want anyone to ever feel like they need to keep up. And I've said it once, and I'll say it a million times. If anybody ever watching any of my social media sees something and the bottle is open and you want to try it, I feel like what I have is just as much as anybody else's.
Right.
As long as you're not gonna like trade it or try and sell it or do something weird with it. I mean, I want like the point is to enjoy it.
And share it.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, I have tons of bottles that aren't open, but I own them because I can't wait for the time that I can open them. Right. And you know, I know things that like Elijah Craig barrel proof. I'm obsessed with all of them. So every time I see one, I buy one because I love them so much. I can't wait to try the next one. So it's just, I don't want anyone to ever feel like they need to keep up with anyone, because I think that then breeds very horrible behavior, and it puts people in financial situations that they don't need to be in. Yeah. And I don't want to promote that.
I jumped on a live with Tim Monday night, and there was a guy that was just in the last 6 months just now getting into whiskey, and he's trying to play catch up with everybody else, and everyone on the live was like, hey man, tell me where you're at and we'll send you samples. You don't need to go out and buy bottles, man. We'll throw stuff your way. Because I think maybe a more interesting question is like, what percentage of the bottles that you have open right now would you buy a second one of?
That's a great question.
Because we're trying to find out, like, we buy them all because like I want to know what all of them taste like. All of them. Somebody's like, hey, you want to buy this? Yes, I do. The $5 bottle, let's see if it's terrible or not. The $500 bottle, let's see if it's $500 good or not. But is it good enough to buy a second bottle? And that's where you start having the more interesting conversation. There is, I've probably got, let's just say I had 50 bottles, but 5 of them I'd purchase again. That means there's 45 that I wouldn't.
Right.
And so
I think that's a great opportunity. If you'd never purchase them again and you're not super interested in really drinking them till they're gone, why not share them with people that may enjoy them?
Absolutely. Yeah. I would much rather share it with somebody than stick it in a cocktail to hide the fact that I don't like it. And I like cocktails as much as anybody else. But if I give somebody else an opportunity to save themselves from buying it, or they taste it and they say, this is fantastic, then I can be like, hey, you want the bottle? Because I'm out of shelf space and I want to be able to put another one on the shelf. And so you can have this and I'll buy another one.
Yeah, that was exactly what happened with us, because that first time we went to Kentucky, we just bought like, oh, what's this? What's that? It was like total piece of candy. So we bought way too much. We spent way too much money. But it was like the first time we left the house in like 8 months or something. So we were very excited to be out in the world. And we just bought everything. And we have one of our cabinets underneath in our bar where pretty much almost all of those bottles live, because we would never just drink them. They're not anything we would ever just casually drink. So we kind of just put them in the hideaway place.
Right. Yeah. That's what this closet over here is. These are the ones that I'm going to drink. There's a closet over here that's like,
Yeah.
there was a time a year ago where something happened, and I'm an emotional purchaser sometimes, and I'm like, well, guess what? I had a terrible day at work today, and something didn't go my way. So you know what? I went out and rage spent a bunch of money on whiskey that I shouldn't have. Now I've got a closet full of things that I have to share with people over time, and that's
I do that with pizza.
Maybe we're illustrating like terrible behaviors of
right.
People.
We have coping issues.
Yeah,
we're getting this like intervention stuff. We're getting really deep down into difficult and hard to deal with personality traits. Neither of us can cope properly.
Yeah, maybe I can add some levity here. All right, so we'll rewind back a little bit. If you aren't, but if a person is a woman who's wanting to find a place to start, aside from obviously Female Whiskey Society's Facebook group or their website or their Instagram page, like what event, what book, what resource, where should they start? Because it can be daunting trying to like walking into a liquor store and staring at a shelf.
And some like middle-aged man stares at you and is like, okay, sweetie, what will it be? And you're like, don't talk to me.
Even if there's not, like, this is my correlation that I make regularly. Like the first girlfriend that I had that was like, hey, I need you to run to Walgreens and pick up a box of tampons for me. Never in my life had I ever done that. And I'm staring and there's just options. Like, what do I do here? I have no point of reference for any of that. And that's what, like, purchasing a brand new thing that you have no point of reference for, or figuring out how to get into it. Like, where do you start?
Yeah, so what I think is really great is there is another group called the Bourbon Women. And the Bourbon Women is a national group, and they have chapters all around the country, and they host all sorts of events. So it was started by Peggy Noe Stevens, the Peggy Noe Stevens. So she's ingrained in the whiskey bourbon world, since birth. So, like I said, there's chapters all over the country. They have tons of events. They're just very open from every level of drinker to brand new. Pretty much every bourbon women event I've gone to, there is different like levels of drinking. You don't just have to drink it neat. There's usually cocktails, there's usually food, chocolate pairings, whatever it is. But also it's really nice to get exposure to individual brands at a time, because I think this can be so overwhelming. You have so many names, Old Forester, Woodford, Brown-Forman, and then you start going up their chain of ownership and it just becomes like, so much. So what's really nice about these tastings is usually it's one brand, Old Forester, and you go through the whole whiskey row. You taste each one of them, you add water, then you have dinner. And they're all different brands all over the country. There's always something. But what's really awesome is every August they have the Bourbon Women Symposium, and it's in Louisville. And you can tell I'm not from Louisville because I call it Louisville. And it's a weekend of just girls drinking, doing classes, going to distilleries, going to, Vendome to see the copper, all of that. Like, it's a whole weekend of something. So if like you really are interested and you want to just dive face first into experience, the Bourbon Women just have tons of events. They have tons of YouTube videos. They have the Cocktail Contessa, who I think is a really great resource of, kind of joining this world without going headfirst into just, sipping neat, because not everyone's going to do that. Not everyone likes it. It's just like, I've been drinking wine coolers for the past 10 years. Which wine should I drink? Oh, you should drink a 1955 Bordeaux. It's like, no, you shouldn't. That's like the worst thing to do. You need to kind of figure out, you
Mhm.
have to walk into it and say, okay, generally, and I think Johnny Walker has it on their website. Obviously, it's a little bit more Scotch, but there's a test you can take. I think it's on Johnny Walker's website, and you can say, I like milk chocolate, and I like really salty potato chips, and
Mhm.
I tend to like really bitter, fruits, and it'll tell you based on what you like. You kind of go towards this realm of whiskeys, and you can kind of from there decide which direction you want to go into as far as drinking. Or one of the things I think is really great is just going to the store, maybe do a little research, figure out what brands are weeders, what are this and that, and just buy a small bottle. It can even be like those little tiny little purse bottles, I like to call them, and you just buy a bunch and you figure out what you like and what you don't like. And that's very inexpensive to do it that way. I mean, what are those, like $1, $2 a piece or something? They're crazy cheap,
Yep.
and you can taste it. But if you just want to know knowledge, there's a ton of knowledge online. If you just Google bourbon whiskey,
Mhm.
get the Stave and Thief, that group that does the certification, their textbook is fantastic. I bought like every book on Amazon possible.
Mhm.
There's one that's all about the women and how women in the history of bourbon, they were the ones that really started it all. They were making the mash because, men didn't go in the kitchen. Men weren't
Right.
making mash. The women were making the whiskey in the kitchen first before it went in the barrels. So I think if you want to get into the history of it, there's a ton of great books. Gosh, how old? Textbooks? Books.
Well, I mean, whenever you get to this point, it is a book about bourbon, but it's a textbook because it's part of the education of your now
Yeah.
new
And,
hobby.
some people aren't readers, and I kind of come and go as far as
Mhm.
reading. I'll open a book and read a page or like a chapter or two, and then I just usually fall asleep or move on to something else. But, just whatever you're interested about bourbon, if it's about the history, get a book. If it's
Mhm.
about what cocktails you can create, buy a cocktail book. Death and Co has some really great cocktail books out there. There's so many great cocktail books. Or find a bar in your area that you're comfortable going to. Maybe it's your local bar that you've always gone to, and tell them, "Hey, I'm interested in trying some whiskeys."
Mhm.
And you can get a really nice introduction. I think whatever it is, whatever you're walking into, you just need to feel comfortable. And at least I'm only speaking from my experience. If I'm comfortable in any situation, I'm way more likely to branch out, try something unique,
Mhm.
or even put myself out there at all. So if that's what it takes, go with your core group of girlfriends, or take a significant other with you, and just, dip your toes into it. Figure out what it is that you want to know more about whiskey, and really you just have to go for it.
Yeah.
But groups like mine and the Bourbon Women, I think, are fantastic groups to go to, where you can hide behind that, your picture or your Instagram persona, and you can just like lurk in the shadows
Mhm.
and learn things. And at the end of the day, if you surround yourself with people who are really kind and who really care about you learning more and who love this world as much as like they want you to love it as that much, then you're going to do well. You're going to find what you love. You just have to get through all the bullshit. And there's a lot of it.
Right. Yeah, that's for sure. And one thing I do want to call out, because I missed this several times when I first heard about Bourbon Women and
Mhm.
their event. It is the Symposium,
Yep, symposium.
right? And
Mhm.
because I don't want anybody to go, well, I'm looking for the symposium, because just
Yeah.
it is what it is. But
Yes.
and I really like the purse bottles thing. I'm saving that. So whenever somebody's like, hey, what should I do? Like, go to the liquor store,
Get
look
purse
behind the
bottles.
shelf, and anything that says bourbon, buy a shooter of it
Hmm.
and work your way through it. Whether you want to do it in one night or not, you're not going to learn anything if you try to do it all in one night. So you probably need to spread it
Yeah.
out. Because if they've got 50 different ones, you're gonna hurt yourself.
And they're getting so like companies coming out with those like tiny little bottles. It's getting like just outrageous how many options are out there.
Everyone's there now. Yeah.
And I know a lot of smaller liquor stores, it's harder to get the variety. And obviously, my first go to is support your local liquor store, your small mom and pop liquor stores. And so if they have them, try them. Or if you're looking for something specific, ask them to get it for you. But there are some, you may have to go to some of the larger stores that have a huge variety and just try it out.
So you also mentioned Moonshine University, and I know you finished the certified bourbon steward.
Yeah, I didn't take the test yet. I'm so lazy.
It's just a matter of clicking through it.
I know that's Ian was like, yeah, there's no way you cannot fail or not.
Right. If you fail this, you just need to shut your group down because you already know all the things that were there. Like you didn't even need to take the class. But are you guys exploring the executive? Are you gonna push that further?
Probably. I don't know. I'm not taking anything too serious right now. I'm just whatever. If I end up there and there's a class, I'll do it. I don't know. Probably. I am a horrible test taker. And
it's multiple.
I probably would. If I didn't do well, I would probably shut down and start drinking vodka or something.
Don't do that to yourself. That's the worst thing. So you've done a few picks. How do you go about like arranging who you're going to work with? Like, how does that happen?
Yeah. So far, everything I've done, I've paid for myself. I've not done through. Well, we just did an Elijah Craig barrel proof, but we were asked to do that by a store, but it's not out yet. But everything else that I've done, I've paid for myself. So I obviously have to find distilleries that are willing to do private purchases. So New Riff was the first one, and that was the easiest one to do. They're just like, oh yeah, here, pick a day, give us your money, and pick your bourbon. Right. So that one was easy, and then I had actually started talking with the ladies from Bluegrass right when I started my group, and I reached out to them originally to do like a happy hour, like a virtual happy hour with my group. And it kind of snowballed into doing a pick. And then I did the pick. And then what else did I do? Oh, the 3-chord. The 3-chord is also based on, female, our local 3-chord. So 3-chord is based out of Michigan. And our 3-chord rep is a woman, Meg, and she's fantastic. And she's in the group. And we've chatted pretty much since day one of me starting the group. And then it just felt like it was the most natural thing to do is just to go with a 3-chord pick. It's Michigan. Yep. It's, they've got a music thing about them. And I love that. And so it was just very natural to go with 3-chord as well.
So do you have any specific brands that you would like to do a single barrel pick with?
Oh gosh, probably. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I love Jack Daniels, so I would love to do Jack Daniels, like a super, like a single barrel. I love Jack Daniels. I would love to do an Old Forester, but what is probably the highest on my list right now is I want to do Kings County.
Okay.
I love Kings County. I love that they do the shorter barrels and there's so many options for super high proof. And they have, they're one of their last bourbons we bought was the highest proof whiskey I think I've ever had. So,
So you spend a lot of time at Valentine's sipping on Mayor Pingree.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I would say Mayor Pingree would be also a very high one, but that's a pretty cutthroat thing to get into.
Right.
It's hard. Like you think getting a pick for, an Old Forester or Jack Daniels is hard. I feel like it's even harder with that small of a distillery in such a heavily populated bourbon loving area.
Yeah. And it's you may be getting, I don't know if lucky is the right word, but I know the state of Kentucky is working on their single barrel legislation. So the direct to individual may be a bigger option. So there may be other brands that are willing to participate in that based off of what's happening here in our state.
Yeah. So I heard that part of that bill passed today. Ian was telling me about it. He apparently told me about it a long time ago, and I have a hard time listening. So it was new news to me today.
Right.
Um,
Well, I mean, it's the legislative process. They've been talking about it for a month, but it's going to take them 2 more months to get it resolved because
yeah,
that's just
it was all. It's all. Everything's brand new to me every day. It's like waking.
Right.
It's like 51st dates. Every day is the same day, but it's new to me.
Nice. That's nice.
But yeah, no, I would love to do a Mayor Pingria, a Valentine. I love what they're doing. I love what they're about. They're smaller, and they've got their own stuff coming, and it's really exciting. They've been using MDP for the past, however many years they've been open, but their stuff is finally coming of age and being bottled. So that's really exciting too.
So you don't do just whiskey, right? Like you had a candle thing where you're putting candles inside of Glencairns, and you've got another new candle thing. So what is this? Like, because we had a discussion on musty, and I'm absolutely here for musty.
I'm here for musty too.
What's going on with the new candles?
Yeah, so I can't sit still and always have to be doing something. So I got this idea. It happened probably almost a year ago when I started the group. I really wanted these bourbon whiskey themed scents in a candle because I don't really like very feminine scents, and I like things that are a little bit stronger, like musty, like we said, and woody, and I like those scents naturally. And it's like, oh, it'd be really cool if you had like a candle that smelled like bourbon. But then, like, all the candles I smell that smell like bourbon, they're like, why? I'm like, why is this so sweet? Like, have you ever?
It's like bourbon syrup. It's like if you were to make
like bourbon maple syrup.
One of my employees gave me maple syrup that was aged in bourbon barrels, and that's what every bourbon candle smells like.
And so it's like, no, it's just that's too much. I don't want my house to smell like cookies, or like, I love cookies, but your candle should not smell like dessert. And so I had actually reached out to several companies, obviously all small, very small businesses, family-owned candle companies, reaching out, asking somebody if I could white label. All they do is make the candle and put it in my Glencairn or my neat glass. I didn't get anybody to respond, not one. I went to 10 plus companies. First started with all the people I knew in Michigan, got recommendations from friends, then kind of started going outside of Michigan. Nobody. So I was like, well, how hard could it be to make a candle? I mean, like, in the end, it's a difficult process. It takes time. It's expensive. But it's like, why can't I do that? So I did a small run of them last year for charity. And then just recently I was doing something. I'm like, you know what? I should do that candle thing again. And so I just was like, bought all the stuff and started making candles. So I'm going to launch hopefully in April sometime when everything is set up. But it's going to be called Charred Studios, and it's going to be a few different lines of products. All of them are candles, but there'll be the charred line will be like Rick House, Isla. So I'll have one that tastes like or smells like Scotch. And then there'll be like a Boulevardier, those types of, bourbon candles. And then there's going to be like the shaken and stirred line, which will be like a Paloma, a bee's knees. So all cocktail themes, but nothing like overly sweet, just very light, citrusy. Like you could feel like I could just drink this candle. Like it smells like actually not as reminiscent, but actually like what you're drinking. And then
you already said it was going to taste like Scotch, so I'm obviously ordering an Isla candle, and I'm going to taste it. And if it doesn't taste like Scotch, I am going to request
definitely it smells like Scotch, and I don't like Scotch, and my kitchen smells like Scotch. It's very earthy, very peaty. It smells like Scotch. Mm-hmm. And then the last part is I'm kind of playing with it, but I'm thinking more along the lines of like Pop Fizz. And I have a different container for those candles, and they're going to be like think mimosa, champagne, more floral, kind of more feminine than any of the other ones, but they're going to be in a very feminine style container. And then I'm doing a whole line of incense as well.
Incense?
Yeah.
Are you making your own incense, or did you get
No, I'm not making the sticks, but I am
Okay.
dipping them in my, yeah.
Okay.
I don't have time.
I didn't like. I'm very much my mom decided, hey, I don't like the soaps that are on the market, so she started making her own.
Yeah.
And not like like making lye soap out of like animal fat or whatever, but like bought the things and cut her own soap. So we're on board with that. When you're like, I'm making incense, I was like from scratch. Like,
yeah, I'm not rolling them or anything. I don't have the space or time for that, but I am dipping them in the same sense that I am doing the candles.
The fact that you said you don't have the time or the space feels like you already looked into what it would take to make your own incense from scratch.
We like ground up the powder, and
so you did, yeah.
Job, okay. I mean, I can melt and pour. Melt and pour is not difficult,
right? But you did the research on what it would take to do it, and you're like, nah, that's too far.
I saw a few Wikipedia pages about it. It looks like it's going to take longer than 10 minutes. It's like, I got ADD. I don't need to throw in that.
You got ADD and you got a kid. Like that. Yeah. Those two things don't equate to
very demanding jobs. So.
I feel that entirely. So you've got candles, you've got glassware, you've got merch. Obviously you'll get a chance to talk about those things when we get to the end here. But I notice on Instagram, most mornings you're posting something about coffee every morning. So when are we getting a Morgan special coffee blend?
Don't even give me any ideas. Ian's probably upstairs like, because I've already wanted to toy with the idea of roasting my own coffee beans.
Listen, my brother's been doing that for the past few months. If you need me to, you can get a hold of him. He's a far nicer human being. You can learn about it. There's a lot of ways to start,
Well, and I have this bluegrass barrel over here.
Mm-hmm.
All 5 gallon. And if you've had the bluegrass, it was delicious. And I guarantee beans being in that.
So this is the experience. So my brother is absolutely a teetotaler and does not drink at all, but he's very, very into coffee. And so usually in the spring, we'll do like a trip, me, my dad, and my brother, just like a once a year, we'll go do something. Cause eventually somebody's going to die and we're not going to be able to do the trip together anymore.
That's uplifting, but totally.
Right. Yeah. But I mean, like, it's a thing we do. And so usually there's like, my dad likes food. I mean, we all like food, but like he likes food to a degree, a little bit more than us. So we find a place that has food, and I like whiskey. So we find a place that has whiskey, and my brother really likes coffee. So we find a place that has coffee. And so last year, I do the Maker's Mark ambassador thing, which where you get to go dip your own bottle, and I did that, and I was like, this is a cool experience. I signed my dad up for it. I was like, all right, I'm gonna sign him up for it. Well, last year was his year to dip his bottle, and so we went up and dipped the bottle. Well, my brother was like, hey, I'd like to age some of my, because he's been roasting his own beans. It's like, I want to age some beans in something to get a whiskey flavor, because I can buy them, but I want to try it myself. And so we bought some staves for Maker's Mark, and he built a box out of it, and he started putting small batch beans in it to try to get the flavor. And the box made out of the staves wasn't enough. And so then I was like, all right, here, I'll give you some whiskey. And we put it in a little spritzer. And so he was able to spritz down the staves and try it. And it took like 3 or 4 rounds of getting it right, but you're going to need to like wet the barrel again before you put anything in there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I don't know, I'm sure you've seen Stave and Bean, John Waddell, his coffee. That stuff is fantastic. It's so good.
I mean, surely he's going to want to start being able to be like, hey, let's do a collaborative effort with Female Whiskey Society where they have their own blend, right?
Well, I've talked to him, and I said, well, what if we did a single barrel bourbon?
Exactly.
And then we did our own coffee inside our barrel after it's done. And he was like, hell yeah, let's do it. I'm like, okay, let's do it.
Sounds like you got your solution. There you go.
Yeah, so I mean, I love coffee, and it's funny. Ian and I travel the same way, but it's, we have to have the coffee for me, the food, the drinks for both of us, because we are just such big foodies. I'll eat literally anything. He's very picky. But then, before we were into bourbon, we're really into craft cocktails. So as we travel the world, we have to go to the best cocktail bars wherever we go. So, we've been cocktail bars, all over Europe and things like that. So that, we travel the same way.
Yep. So your husband is in the chat complaining about he's about to cut the power to the house before you start another business. I think
told
that's
him.
directly in relation to that. But like we can throw another one on there because obviously you have an affinity for food, you have an affinity for drink, you have an affinity for travel. Maybe you need to like start crafting Kentucky tour experiences, and so you can have the Female Whiskey Society, and you can even cater it off of women. Be like, hey, women that want to
I
tour.
actually thought about that built in if we get a house in Kentucky that we could have like this whole, experience built in.
See, there you go. I wholeheartedly support this because I am not financially invested in the situation.
So you're giving all your ideas to me so I can
Correct.
my credit.
Correct. Absolutely. Well, I mean, like you like to start things. I'm just trying to help. I'm just trying to help you
My
expand your
problem is
empire.
I need somebody to finish them for me. I have a million okay, I've got a whole little situation over here where I was like, I need one of those Cricut things, and I'm gonna make vinyl, and I'm gonna make like glasses and shirts and this and I mean, I use it, but I need to get back on track.
We have a Cricut, we have a wood lathe, we have an embroidery machine. We've looked at getting a laser etcher. Like we have all we're hobbyists as well in this household. So I support this endeavor. Like my wife's got a photographer grade camera because this is a thing that she's interested in, and I'm like, hey, let's whatever.
Yeah, I think that's next on the list is a good camera. Because right now the phones are great, but they really don't cut it. Right. But have you seen that? Oh, what's it? Glowforge?
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen that? Mm-hmm. Oh shoot! I need one of those.
I know if I had the space, we would definitely have it, but we have to buy a new house for space, and that's not happening for a while.
Yeah, because you're like, I'm not getting rid of any of my bourbon, so
no, that's silly.
You took over my closet, so. Also, another one of the things I do is I resell clothes on a website called Poshmark.
Yeah,
so I have this closet behind us where all of my inventory was in, and now it's a little tiny bit of inventory in all of our backup bottles.
Right.
So I've lost my closet.
Yeah, no, I need more space. We've got a shop out back that we don't use for anything shop related other than storage. I'm like, I think I could insulate that and put some air conditioning, and I could move everything out there, and I could have an entire whiskey hut,
Yeah.
And my wife's like, stop.
No, I think that's a great idea. I kind of want to.
You think you need a whiskey hut now?
I want to. I can't. We can't put any outside things in our yard.
We have no HOA. We're in the middle of nowhere.
And we got in trouble, so.
Yeah, we have no HOA. We're in the middle of nowhere, Kentucky.
Yeah.
My parents are my neighbors. Like we purchased my parents' house some years ago because they're old and they needed to be kicked out. This is our progression. Like our first home was my grandmother's house, and we bought that and evicted her. And then our second home was my parents were like, we're getting older. We want a house that's all on one level. And like they built it on a concrete slab. So if they get in a wheelchair, they can get out of their car and then go everywhere without worrying.
Everything you do is for like end result of something really depressing. We travel because someone's going to die.
Right. Well, like these are the eventualities of all the things, right? Crippled. I mean, I'm not interested in becoming a vampire, so I don't want to live forever, But
also, you sound like a really crappy family member. You're just like going down the family tree.
I think that they would probably agree that I'm a really crappy family member. You're not wrong.
You like show up at your brother's house and you're like, "All right, it's mine. Bye, bitch."
Yes, you're not too far from it. We had made this joke. Both my parents were like, we want to be cremated, and we're like, what are we going to do with these ashes afterwards? Because neither one of us want them. We're like, I'm going to play a game where like I go visit my brother and I hide it in his house.
Oh, that's a great idea.
And then when he finds it, he's got to be like, oh, that son of a bitch got me, and he'll have to try to come visit me and hide it in my house. But if you
then one day you're going to sit around and be like, we're really playing hide and seek with our parents' ashes.
Absolutely, yes. But it forces interaction, in a sad, after things happen, people sort of separate. Like forces interaction, and also makes a fun game.
Was it the Office? Was it Office Space where they put the fish in the ceiling, or was it The Office?
That would have been Office Space, I think, because it wasn't The Office.
Yeah, it's like they were hiding like fish in the ceiling. I can't remember what it was.
Oh, no, the cell phone went in the ceiling in The Office.
Oh, that's what
it was. Andy's cell phone. That's where he put his fist through the wall.
They were hiding fish in the ceiling. I can't remember. And I've only seen Office Space like one time, so.
It was a long time ago. long time. I don't even feel like you're old enough to have watched Office Space.
When did that come out?
I don't know, like in the 90s, I'm pretty sure.
Office Space came out. Well,
I'm pretty sure.
I wasn't born in the 90s.
Right. Well, yeah, but you would have been like what, 11 or something?
Well, I didn't see it until I was like 30. Let's see.
99. It was made in 1999.
So I was
Nope, I don't need you to say it out loud. I
I
don't
was
need you to
12.
say it. Don't do that. This is the worst.
Is that right? 90, yeah, 7, 8, 9. Yeah. I was born in 87. I was 12.
I was in college. Thanks for that. Thanks for that.
Age ain't nothing but a number.
No, this is exactly how I spend my life because all of my employees at work are similarly aged to you, and all of our support staff on the software end of the building are all similarly aged. And I'm like the old guy.
Oh, that's
someone occasionally calls me dad. It's real weird.
So my CEO is less than a year older than I am. So a lot of my coworkers are my age just because it's just a natural gravitation. But most of our sales reps are all, like 45 plus.
My
But
people.
My people. But then like the internal staff, they're all in their 30s because our boss is in his 30s.
Right.
So
it just sort of happens that way. So
yeah, just natural.
You said earlier that you were depression purchasing whiskey because your trip to Thailand and Bali and Taipei was canceled, right?
True.
So you have a high affinity for traveling. You obviously want to go and see all the things. Does this entire thing end whenever like we can go travel again? We're going to the world.
No, if anything, it makes me more excited to see not only whiskey, but what other spirits are out there that are like the normal spirit, the not natural spirit, like
the native spirit of different
their spirit, their home spirit, and which has always been an interest. Ian thinks it's more of a joke to bring me shitty spirits from around the world and make me drink them. But I think it makes me more excited to see what bottles of whiskey and bourbon look like in other countries.
Mm-hmm.
It now just makes it even worse because then there's different things are more available, and we already have a couple of bottles that are from, I think. We just got a Four Roses, and I can't remember exactly where it was from. Maybe Poland.
Must have malts. Yeah, that was the one that came from me. See,
Yeah,
this is what makes me feel like a creep is that like I can correlate all these things from Instagram, but we don't actually know each other. But you're like, oh, we just got a Four. I'm like, yeah, from Must Have Malts.
Yeah, it was Must Have Malts, but I believe it was. Right. I want to say it was a Polish. Mm-hmm. Or maybe it was Ukrainian. I know if Ian yells down the stairs, I'll know because he remembers things I don't. But then I have a Booker's that is from maybe that was the one that's from Poland. So I think it makes me more excited to get out there, travel, and see what's on the shelves at other stores and try their native spirits that are very unique to their area, their territories. We've been to Portugal and there's a cherry liqueur called Ginja. And then there's Romania. I think it's called Tuica, but they're all like, their nation's, native distilled spirits. So I'm really excited in trying more of those. And I've always been excited about that, but I think it's added even an extra layer of what unique things, can I experience from this whiskey world. Yeah. So I think it's just going to make it worse.
Well, that's good to know because it's just more content, obviously. You mentioned your husband likes to bring you shitty international spirits to try.
Yeah, they're horrible.
But you want to try things from different countries. Yeah. Is he bringing you the Booker's equivalent of those international spirits, or is it something else? Because to really kind of be fair, since you started with Booker's, you've got to find the Booker's equivalent in whatever that nation is.
No, it's more of the Family Dollar equivalent. The last thing he brought me was from the airport. So he's like, I wanted to get you a bottle of this, but I ran out of time. And so I got it from the airport. So we have this thing. He kept trying. It was a plum liqueur, plum spirit from Romania. I want to say if it's not Tweeka, it's something else that's from a different country. But some of the nicer brands, they'll take the bottle and they put it on the plum tree, and the plum actually will grow inside the bottle. This was not one of those brands. This was kind of had like this really crappy like Romanian flag painted on the label. It was really bad. But we had been house shopping, during this whole thing, and I told him, I said, okay, our house, like everything goes through and we get the house, I will take a shot of Tweeka or whatever this was. I will do it. I will do it. So everything went through. We're sitting on the porch of our old house. He goes, today's the day. I'm like, okay, let's do it. Oh my, it was just so bad. I mean, it's really, I don't know much about it. I assume it's just like plum vodka.
Right. It's their version of like moonshine that was made in somebody's tub. And they may have like dipped a plum in it briefly. And then now it's.
So speaking of that, my mom comes from a very large family, and she always has these uncles that come over on Christmas, and her family's so large that we always have to celebrate Christmas in like a VFW hall.
Right.
Anyway, so we're always at this VFW hall, and she always has these uncles that bring their homemade wine. And so we're like, oh, Uncle so-and-so brought his toilet wine again. And they drink it. And it's like, it is to be so gross. I imagine that's what Tweeka is like.
This is the equivalent in Kentucky of somebody's bringing their homemade moonshine. This is a thing.
We get that too. My parents are obsessed with moonshine, and moonshine is so like mainstream popular too, because you have so many people that are making it at home. I have cousins that make it, and like I said, if my family is not in, my family's all from Tennessee, so they're cooking something,
right?
They're cooking something.
Yeah.
So why not? Moonshine is the best thing they could be cooking right now.
You're definitely not wrong. It's maybe the least illicit thing they could be cooking up.
Yeah, they're cooking something. So.
Whew, yeah, moonshine. That's it. I could always tell. There's a university here in town. That's where I went to college. I'm from this area. I could always tell, even at a college party, when someone snuck moonshine into what it was already mixed as the party punch, because either people were getting naked or fighting, or both. And
it probably tasted like rubbing alcohol.
This is why I maintained my own drink. I don't know what it tasted like, because I know that, like let's keep the top on the drink and make sure we take care of ourselves.
You're like the only guy in college who's covering his drink.
Well, it's not so much that. It's like, I'm not drinking somebody's moonshine because I don't want to go blind, because I don't trust you. That's wherever it came from.
Yeah. So way back in the day, my grandfather, who's from Tennessee, he actually used to run moonshine.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my parents. My dad loves it. They're obsessed with it. I could probably tell you that I've never had it. I've never had any type, even the mainstream brands. I don't think I've ever had a moonshine.
Well, that's a shame. You've got to go back to the source to know where it all began, right?
No, I think I'm good.
See, that's a reasonable response.
I think I'm good.
Now, of the ideas I've tossed out, the thing that you're balking, like you're ready to start 3 other businesses that I've tossed out, but drinking moonshine is the line.
Yeah, I'm a little busy. I have a lobotomy that day, so that's not gonna work for my calendar.
All right. So one of the things that you do is you'll jump on Instagram and taste bottles, or even taste one of your own single barrels that you've selected. How did you get comfortable giving tasting notes? Because that's a place where, the live I did Monday night, the gentleman jumped on and he said, I hear all these tasting notes and I don't ever feel I can get it. Like, how did you get to the point in 2 years where you're like, I'm going to feel comfortable giving tasting notes?
Yeah. So I will be the first one to say I am extremely hard to please. And I'm very, very picky about what I drink. And I'm not really, I won't be disrespectful, and I will be as polite as I possibly can, but I'm very, very picky about what I drink. And I think all people should be. Um, and I wouldn't say that it's necessarily a comfort thing. For me, I'm just here to just have a good time and be honest with people. And I don't think anyone should take what any one person or any person at all says as far as tasting notes. I think it should all be taken with a grain of salt. Um, but I'm just here to be me. And so for me, it's not a comfort thing. I don't know how to be anybody else but me. So I'm going to come on here. I'm going to drink this. And I think a lot of it, and I saw that live, and I agree with a lot that was said that night, is so much of it is because of things from your memory.
Mhm.
You pull flavors and tasting notes out of, and flavors and out of bottles purely by things, experiences you've had. So if you've never experienced, also I think there's a big part of it that's bullshit. But for example, marzipan. If you've never eaten marzipan, you're never going to say something tastes like marzipan. But if you grew up eating, pretzels dipped in peanut butter, that could very well be a tasting note. It may be ridiculous to the person that's never had a pretzel dipped in peanut butter, but for you, it's like, oh, something about X, Y, and Z flavors remind me of that peanut butter dip, with the pretzel. And so I think for me, I'm just being true to myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm saying, I'm drinking this. This is what I get. And, if you're tasting with someone, they may say, oh, like I'm getting this. It's like, oh, I could see that. But I interpreted it this way. You may say, oh, I taste green apple. But for me, my palate senses more sweetness. I'm more sensitive to sweetness. So while you got crisp green apple, I don't know what the comments are. So I can only assume that my husband's being an asshole.
No. It's not at all. No.
But other people may get like green apple Jolly Rancher, because of sweetness. So for me, like I said, it's not a comfort level thing. I don't know how to be anybody other than me. So if I'm tasting something, you're going to get what you get. I get there's not a lot of, I don't want to say there's not a lot of authenticity, but I feel like there is quite a bit of people who aren't authentic with what they put out there. And I feel like it's a real shame and it's a real disservice to the whiskey community when people go out there and say they taste X, Y, and Z. And it's like, when was the last time you had a fucking fig? Please, that wasn't a Newton. Like, come on,
Right.
who just eats figs? What universe do you live in? Or what, like, besides old women, who's eating marzipan?
See, you can replace marzipan with macarons because the ingredients are virtually the same, right? This is the thing that I always tell people. Like, if somebody's like, "Oh, I taste," if you're in a tasting with somebody and they're like, "I taste marzipan," you'd be like, "Yeah, it sort of tastes like macarons to me." Like just
and you
just
have to be very specific. Macaroon or macaron?
Macaron, not
Well, and I
macaroon,
think
macaron.
the same old ladies that eat marzipan are eating macarons, because
Right, yeah, absolutely. But it's a way for you to throw it back, and the
Yeah.
the thing that I've always kind of aligned to is that you can taste more things by tasting more things, and you kind of align to that,
Yes,
like
you open up your palate.
right.
And I have and this is not to sound any sort of way, but I know I have a very strong palate. Most people don't start their night with 135 proof whiskey. And I do because lower proof whiskey tends to be less flavorful, or because of the more water inside of a whiskey, I just don't sense the flavor. And it's not about the alcohol content, it's about a punch of flavor. I want my whiskey, and I think people aren't as strict and have high enough expectations of what their whiskey should be doing. And I get different strokes for different folks, but if you're consuming whiskey, my opinion is that it should tell a story. And I get I respect that there's all different, places for different types of whiskey. But for me, a whiskey should have a story to tell. You may drink whiskey every night if that's your thing. You may drink it once a week, once a month, whatever. But whenever you're consuming it, I think we have to get out of the headspace of consuming to consume. I mean, at least for me, I don't give a shit what people do, but for me, I want to get out of the habit of consuming to consume. I want to consume and I want to enjoy it. I don't understand even like where people like the fast food. You got to eat, you got to eat. But to really enjoy a meal, to sit back and just really thoroughly enjoy every layer of that meal. I want whiskey to be an experience. I don't want to just get shit faced. I mean, who doesn't like a good buzz? But whiskey should, for me, I want it to be so much more. And so I just hold whiskey to really high expectations. And if it doesn't meet that, I just won't drink it. But it doesn't mean that I can't talk to you about it or tell, the next person about it. And one of the big ones for me right now, and I've talked about it time and time again, but it's just a very clear, whiskey in this realm is Barrel Seagrass.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like Barrel Seagrass, but I totally respect what Barrel Seagrass is. Seagrass has a story. There's a start, there's a middle, there's an end. It tells a story. There's flavors, and the flavors are very bold, and it's got that hug and it's got spice. I respect everything it is, but it's not what I appreciate in flavors. I don't like minty, herbaceous, salty. That's not how I like my whiskey. But I would know probably half a dozen to a dozen people that I know would love and who do love that bottle. Not that I would shit on it, because I would never shit on it, because I think it's a premium spirit that deserves to be talked about.
Yeah, it's right here. Like, I'm one of the people who does love it. It's over your shoulder. It's right there.
It's almost gone too.
It's right next to a New Year's bottle, and then it's right next to what looks like a single barrel, which is right next to
the rye.
Yeah.
I really love their ryes are fantastic, and I like rye, but I'm I'm very persnickety about rye.
I haven't had anything from them that I've disliked, and like the nerdy side of me absolutely enjoys who they are, because they come out of a tech world. Like their CEO is a former software guy, and their blending center is in a former IBM lab where they had servers in it.
I love that.
Yeah, it's the nerd in me that loves it.
Yeah, I love what they do. I love blending. I think blending is so cool, because I mean, you can distill, and as a distillery, a distiller, I was watching there was a live with Mike from Blue Run before I hopped on here, and he goes, we don't care about age. We taste a barrel, and if Jim Rutledge says it's ready, it's ready. It doesn't matter how old it is. If it's ready, it's ready. And we trust his experience, his palate, and everything he's been through to say, whatever the age is in the barrel, it's ready. And as a distillery, you have the ability and taste barrels and go, you know what? It needs more time. It needs more time. Blenders, they don't have control. I mean, I assume they get to taste things before they purchase them.
Right.
But you have all these barrels, and you may not have the space that you could keep a barrel on a shelf for the next 6 to 10 years and hold on to it. But then you've got to figure out, okay, this barrel, what do we want this one to say? We're going to blend it. What do we want this bottle to say? This one's a little minty, this one's a little smoky, and then you're playing with all, this. And I think that's why, besides barrel, I really love the Joseph Magna cigar blend. First of all, girl power with Nancy Fraley at the helm of that. I super dig her. She's one of the coolest, just like normal people ever. But you have to think about, there's sherry, cognac, Armagnac. It's like there's so much going on, and it's like I said, it tells a story. and I totally love, and I'll back up and say I totally love, a benchmark foolproof where it's just it is what it is, and that's what it is. I totally respect that, and I'll drink that, and I'll
Mhm.
drink, small batches and single barrels. But I have to have my go-to whiskeys have to have more substance to them. They have to have oh, Ian texted me. The Four Roses was from Spain.
Spain. You didn't even mention that particular country, but you mentioned like 4
I
other ones.
mentioned like 100 others. I don't
Yeah.
want that. I
He
don't.
he had to make sure that he gave you the right
Yeah.
information. He
Well,
was
usually he's like in like the corner here saying, "No, it's this." But
right.
not
He was
here
trying to
tonight.
give you space. He was like, "Hey, I'm gonna give you a little
He
space."
keeps me on track. But you know, I think we have people in the community in for example the Instagram world that we have to remember they get bottles for free and they get samples for free, and I get some things from time to time myself. If I get something, my personal way of doing things, if I get something and I do not like it, you won't see about it.
Yeah.
I won't badmouth a product. I just think that's disrespectful, because I know what it's like to work for a smaller company who's trying to build, a brand
Mhm.
and play a small role in this big huge ocean. I know what that's like, so I'll never badmouth a product, but I will never post praise about a product that I don't enjoy and respect. But I don't think that there's a lot of people in this space that have that type of integrity.
No, I think you're exactly right, and I try to look at it from the lens of it might not be my cup of tea, but it's probably going to be somebody. Somebody is going to enjoy this. It's kind of like what you were just saying about seagrass. Is that
Yeah,
you don't particularly like it, but you
yeah,
know people who love it, and
yeah.
that's the thing that it's about it. And you were talking about blending versus aging,
Mhm.
and I'm with you. And I think that there's a cat that is just bothering me now.
Just like, I don't know, like it's not even your cat?
No. Well, I hope it's our cat. Like we have a
Well, you
cat.
say it like it's just, "Whoa, where'd this cat come from?"
Well, I mean, it could be a I mean, like my wife just came in the door, so it could be a random cat that followed her in. I have no idea. We
You
do
are in
live
the
in a rural.
country.
Correct, yeah.
Could
But
be a barn cat.
I think we don't have any barn cats, so if so, it's completely feral. But I think
Get
that
rabies tonight.
you're assuming I don't already have it. Like we
What?
have raccoons and possums. Come on.
You're getting in your house?
No. In the just
Really
in the
need to
random yard
seal your
here.
doorways.
Yeah, we have chickens. Like we do have chickens, and so that brings on
Do you eat
predators.
their
And,
eggs? Or are they just to
um,
look at?
they're They're sort of for eggs, but they're really like a biology experiment for our children. Like you learn a lot of things. Like both of our children's absolutely both of our children's.
Both
Yeah,
are chitlins.
I got to slow down on the bluegrass distillers here, but the both of our children will like our chickens. They do chicken things. They're like, oh look, the chickens are mating, and so it's just like
How old are your kids?
one is 11 and one is 8.
Okay.
And they still use that term, and I'm letting her go into middle school using that term that will also potentially be what she uses if she refers to human beings, because
Yeah.
it may decrease the chances of any concerns for
Because you
us.
hope that if she's using the term mating, that she's only going to be using it for procreation, not for any enjoyment.
You know,
Which
I
is what
I, I
all
want I
our
want
daughters
her
do.
to enjoy her life to the fullest.
I
Our bare threshold is if we can make it to Christmas of their senior year of high school with no children and no arrests, we've succeeded. Like that's how we've made it. Because even if something were to happen, like if they got arrested at Christmas of their senior year of high school with arraignment and trials, like they're out of high school by the time that's over, right? Like you don't have to deal with
Right?
that.
Damn. What's happened in your family? I feel like that's some shit I would have said. If I can make it to senior year, at least like March without any arraignments, scheduled,
Look,
I'll probably graduate.
it's the minimum threshold of success. That's where we're at. Like, we want more for our children, but that's the
Yeah.
minimum threshold. Like, they're both smart kids. My wife is way smarter than me, and so they're super intelligent, reading beyond their levels, doing all
You
of those
said
things.
you're in software. I'm sure you're very smart.
Oh, see, when I say my wife is smarter than me, people automatically assume I'm saying I'm stupid. I'm not saying I'm stupid. I feel like
She's
I
just
am.
really smart.
Aside from the decision to marry me, she's a very, very, very smart human being. My wife just yelled up, "You're full of crap." I don't know if she's watching this or what she's doing.
Get
That's it.
her up here.
She's
That's weird.
never ever listened to or watched an entire episode of anything I've done in a year and a half. And that's like, I don't push it on her. Like, nobody in my family knows I do it, not because I'm ashamed of it, just because I don't need them being like, "Oh, we're watching because we support you." Like,
I'm like,
you're
please
interested,
don't support this.
like, if you're interested, you watch. If you're not interested, please don't. So
Yeah.
I don't do the social network.
My family doesn't know that I do any of this, but I don't think that they know like what Instagram is.
Right.
So like, I don't come from like a tech. I don't even know if my parents have internet. My parents are just, they're not those type
What
of
part of
people.
Tennessee are they in?
No, my parents live up in the Flint area.
Okay.
I think if they have internet, it's only for because my nephews live with them.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think they have a computer. And I think if my dad's a truck driver. He's retired now, but they forced them to use tablets instead of logbooks.
Yep. My father-in-law's a gas truck driver, so I'm
So
familiar with that.
he filed a grievance with himself because he's his own union steward, and then he put in for his retirement and said that he wasn't going to be using any type of tablet because he went like a couple of years without using it, and he was like, "I'm not using it." And then they were like, "Yeah, it's a company mandate." He goes, "Well, then I'm retiring."
He filed a grievance with himself.
Because he's the union steward.
I am absolutely on board with that 100%.
So my parents are not technology people. I don't even think my parents know what I do for like work. Like, I don't think they have any idea what my job is.
I've tried
to be honest with you, most days I don't know what it is either.
I know what my job is, but for I've been with this company almost 10 years, and I have tried to explain to my family what I do.
Yeah.
And I'm in agricultural software. That's it. But
and
they're
that
like,
doesn't even make any sense.
Well, it doesn't, but there's a lot more to it than that. But they're always like, wait, like the things that are in tractors that are the monitors that you can see stuff, and I'm like, no, that's not at all what we do. And
I don't even know what that is.
In most tractors, they have like a unit, it can self-drive, like it can do all of its own things, and they just sort of.
So it's like the Tesla of John Deere's.
This has been around for 10 years, so yeah, it's been around for a while.
Like
but
Elon Musk.
It's like far safer because the worst thing you run over is a fence, right? But finally, after 5 years of being like, no, that's not it, I just like, yeah, that's exactly what we do. We work on those things. That's all it is, you know.
Bingo, you got it.
Right.
I've worked for the same company for about 8 or 9 years now, and I've just had like 20 different jobs within the company, so there's just no point in trying to explain it.
Same. Yeah,
and my mom one day was like, "Do you still work at the chocolate shop?" And I was like, "Mom, I haven't worked there since I was like 24.
Sometimes it's just easier to say yes.
Sometimes I was before, so now I work in the dental industry. Before then, I was a chocolatier, which is really kind of funny. I went
like an actual chocolatier.
Yeah, I was actually a chocolatier.
Okay, so this makes so much more sense of like your connection to food and beverage and.
Oh, so I went to culinary school for a short stint. I did some time.
If I were to win the lottery, that is absolutely would go to culinary school. Like that would be a thing I would just, and not even to like work in it, just to go.
Yeah, it was an amazing experience. I didn't get to finish because I have ADD, and I was like, ooh, I should do this instead.
Right.
So while I was in culinary school, I worked at a yacht club, and hated every moment of that. But I learned a lot of things. And like most people, just let women carry 200-pound chafing dishes and not care.
Right.
But no, it was a great experience. And then I went and I was a chocolatier for a couple of years and found the company that I work at now. And I actually answered an ad on Craigslist, which was really, you can't say that now because people will be like,
You can answer an ad on Craigslist, but you're not getting not that kind of job from it.
no,
I mean, like
I
you're
actually
getting
found a career out of it.
right. Well, I mean, some people are still finding careers.
Well, yeah, a legit career that I can get, a tax statement from.
Well, I mean, like, yeah, legit is a bit of a misnomer. Like, there are certain trades that have been around since the existence of man that may still be illicit, but
That's true. Selling dental supplies. I don't sell them, but I support the people that do.
did they hire you because you had generated business for them already by being a chocolatier? Like, you've given everyone cavities.
Yeah.
This is just the next progression.
Yeah. No, I don't even know that I had that on my resume. Somehow I got that job. So before then, I was in ophthalmology, and I was actually an ophthalmic technician, and I assisted on putting needles in people's eyes.
Oh, that's
yeah.
Well, it was nice talking to you. Cool. I'm gonna have to go now. Nope, I can't.
So well, the fun part was when I did photography. I actually took pictures of the back of the eye. I took pictures of retinas, and then I would also do low radiation scans of the back of the eye, looking for diabetic retinopathy and macular degeneration and tears. And
what do you know about uveitis? Have you ever heard of this?
Yeah, I've heard of uveitis, but I didn't firsthand. I don't know that the technology that I use can find uveitis. I think that's more from a physical exam.
Correct. Right. So my mother has suffered from that, and so she had to have fluid drawn off of her eye with a needle. And so that's the reason, like, when you're like, it's needles and eyes, like, I'm immediately out because I know this is what my future is, because I get all my terrible medical things from her. So I know there's going to be a needle in my eye at some point in time. And I distinctly remember this really terrible Steven Seagal movie whenever I was younger. And one of the tortures was like somebody was going to get a needle jammed in their eye and they're going to heat the needle up and it was going to blow up the eyeball, like, in just the worst way. And that vision of a needle going towards an eyeball haunts me to this day. I am 41 years old and I probably watched that whenever I was 14. And it's just
not bad. We numb the eye before we do it.
It's not the no, it's not the pain. Right. So
I wouldn't want to. I don't even like needles. I would usually look away. I would do that thing. So I only got
Wait, you were poking needles in people while you were looking somewhere else?
No, I didn't know. I assisted the doctor. He was the needle poker.
Okay.
I was the assistant. I only got that task because they said I was fast on the computer, because I was like 20 years younger than everybody that worked there. They're like, hey, go into the OR, scrub up, because you're fast on computers. And I'm like, okay, let's do it. And so I'm like assisting in this. So I would just like find a spot on the wall and just like, I'd be like, oh, it's okay, old lady. And then I'd go like,
don't look. No.
But there was only one time where something happened where I ended up feeling icked out, but
yeah. No, and
somebody moved.
It's not like a pain thing. Like, this is really taking a turn, but I'm here for
somebody
it.
moved.
We're going down there. Oh, it's the moment, like whenever somebody puts a needle into something, like, you know how whatever it is, it like gives a little bit, like it creates a dimple and then it pops back. That specific moment is the part that bothers me about needles more than anything else. Is like the skin's like, I'm not gonna give, and then it pops back out. Nope.
Yeah, so what we do is you take so you put like a lid speculum in their eye so their eye stays open, and then you take a caliper and you measure from the outermost part of the iris to where you need to get into the eye. So with Lucentis is a chemical, it's a medication that you put in the eye for people who have wet macular degeneration, and it dries it up. So you put in a small hole in the eye, like with the caliper, and then you put the injection in that. But it's funny because, I mean, a lot of people have wet macular degeneration, but my dad actually gets the same injections. He has wet mac gen, which he gets the same injections that I used to support, like help put people in people's eyes.
He's not ever like, hey, can we just bypass the doctor and you can do this at the house for me?
Nope, at the house. You're so from the South. Hey,
Yeah.
we do this at the house.
Yeah,
we go down to the house.
I don't want to go into town for this.
You gonna be in down at the house?
Yep,
The
absolutely.
house.
I mean, I could have said the garage, but I feel like that's not clean enough. Like the garage is not where you want to be for this.
No, you want to be in the house, but also I've been
At
to
the
all the
hospital.
houses of my family in Tennessee. I think I want to be in the garage.
So you're saying they maintain their garage better than their house? Is
Yeah,
that what we're getting
they
at?
love their cars.
Well, yeah, I mean, you got to keep it safe. It's
You pay a lot of their cars probably cost more than their houses.
what is this in East Tennessee?
So I don't know directions right now, but they were outside of Chattanooga.
Okay, yep, East Tennessee. Yeah.
So the cutest little town, Saudi Daisy.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like you have to say that with a twang. They're from Saudi Daisy, but there were some issues. There were some town issues. And half the town is Saudi, half the town is Daisy. Because they had some sort of battle.
Is this like a Hatfield and McCoy situation, or is this like a Civil War situation?
I don't think it was Civil War.
Not Civil War, but like a Civil War type situation. You know,
I don't think it was that deep. I think it was like, I'm drunk. Oh, you're drunk. Oh, we're splitting up.
Yeah, absolutely. I will be looking at this later on because this is just an interesting. My in-laws are from Southwest Tennessee, on the other side of the state. But the reason I said that is that East Tennessee and East Kentucky have a very, very similar vibe where you're likely to see a $50,000 or $60,000 house or $50,000 or $60,000 car sitting in the driveway of a house with holes in the roof. Like it just is a regular occurrence, and so it makes sense that the garage may be in better condition than. Yeah. The actual inside of the house would be.
Yep. Yeah, that's no different. Actually, that's how Detroit is too. But it's usually because like 5 family members go in on one car together.
Right.
And then their house is like barely standing, but they have a brand new Escalade. It's like, how did that happen? It's not abnormal to see like $100,000 car in the driveway of like an $80,000 house.
Right. Yeah, and you're looking in a metropolitan area where an $80,000 house in a rural area is like a $30,000 house. Like
right.
That's the thing that people have to adjust. Like my local friends would be like, $80,000 house. That's not terrible, but that's because it's nothing.
So I joined the YouTube, and it looks like you're a brutal landlord.
I'm well, I mean, I did start with
well, you're just buying all your family's houses.
Evicted my grandmother, and then my parents.
Poor Nana's out there in the street. She's like, it's cold in the barn.
Look, Nana was a pharmacist. Nana ain't got no problems. Don't even worry about Nana.
She's like highfalutin in that home.
Well, I mean, Kentucky pharmacist. So I mean, we don't want to go that far.
A pharmacist is a pharmacist is a pharmacist.
Actually, yeah, like if I phrase it as Kentucky pharmacist, that might have a different connotation.
Yeah, I was
who's a licensed practice?
Pharmacy is she running?
Right. Yeah. No, not that kind. Mm-hmm. Not the kind from your house. The kind where you actually go to a store that has a, legal ability to. This is getting worse. So I'm going to backtrack a whole lot. We're going to go way, way back.
We're rewinding.
We were talking about blending and aging a long time ago.
Alcohol, whiskey, not drugs.
Yeah,
legal or illegal.
I'm not trying to monetize, but I'm also not trying to get shut down either. Like he's talking about drugs. What's the
I would be the person that would come on here and get you shut down. If anyone's gonna do it, it would be me.
If it's not you, maybe it's Alan. I don't know. One or
maybe
the other.
Both. Like he started it, and I'm just like finish him.
They were already looking at me, and they're like, "Hey, and I squoze a Tim and a Jack in the middle." But, anyways, I think personally, I think that blending and aging in secondary barrels is the future of bourbon in the United States. And we have these. You talked about age statements being part of the problem, like the master blenders are just going to put together, this tastes really good and it's worth $100, drink it, and it's true. In Europe and Scotland and England and Ireland, the master blender means far more than the distiller does because they're creating that blend. But they also come with if it doesn't have a 10-year age statement, it's probably not going to be good. But the difference is, like, they live in a world of second use barrels and significantly different climate where you have to have 10 years to get past a significant grain flavor. And I'm with you. Like, I'm on board with what Penelope is doing and what Barrel is doing, and to some degree what Smoke Wagon, like these blenders, Nancy Fraley out with Joseph Magnus and every other thing she works on. Like,
Yeah.
if I trust what they're doing and they say it's $150 bottle, let's go. Let's see what they've got, because aging to 10, 12, 20 years, that's gone. Like, we're not going to be able to do that a ton anymore. The reason we have 20-year product available to us right now is because nobody gave a shit about bourbon in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
Right?
And I think you have to also too look at the people we're talking about. You know, Smoke Wagon, Aaron, Nancy Fraley, Penelope, so Mike, and Barrel. Like, these people are not, they're, if you think about the people that they are, they're not the people that you hear about that are kind of perpetuating this cutthroat bourbon industry.
Mm-hmm.
They're not necessarily people that even came from the bourbon world. None of them did, actually. You've
Right.
got Barrel, that you said, you know, IT, techie, software people. Nancy Fraley came from the cognac and Armagnac world. Mike from Penelope, I can't recall what he was doing, but he wasn't born and bred in whiskey. And Aaron from Smoke Wagon was in the bar industry.
Yeah, and his partner was in the movie industry, right?
Yeah, not any of them came from their grandpappy's recipe, which there's no knock on that, but that's a whole different thing. You know, their grandpa's such and such recipe that's been handed down for 150 years and years of distilling and product creation. I think with them, you automatically walk into, and that's why I like Blue Run too. You automatically walk in and say, I feel like there's even more authenticity, because you walked into this knowing I'm going to have to prove myself. Right. I don't have a last name to protect me. I don't have this long lineage of all these bourbon distilleries I've worked with. I've kind of got to create something really fucking delicious, because if I don't out of the gate, they're going to laugh me out of wherever.
Well, and not just that, but they're coming in to this, you know, if your last name is Bean or No or something else, like, you may be coming into this because it's expected, but if you're coming from the tech world, if you're coming from healthcare, you're coming from, like, why did you end up here? Did you just pick a segment and say, this is where I want to be?
Yeah.
Or did you come here?
Pinhook. I think Pinhook is a great one to even bring in.
Which he comes from the culinary world, so that's I feel like that's an easier.
I feel like it's a lot easier of a transition, but I also I realized I was watching oh gosh, I can't remember #bourbon. I cannot remember his first name, but I was watching a live where he was he went on with Blake from Sealbox, and he was talking about Pinhook and what that actually meant and why they chose that name. And it's like, well, damn, I didn't even realize that. And how cool is that? Because, you know, it's not about the horse racing, it's about the horse.
Right.
And that's what a Pinhook is. And I didn't know that. Mm-hmm. And they're a great one, I think, to add to this mix. And I really appreciate what these people are doing, because they're giving a lot for the distilleries. And while I respect that they get to choose, you know, they get to go into MGP or Castle and Key or whomever they're buying their bourbon from, and they get to choose the barrels, but they're still choosing barrels that they didn't make.
Mm-hmm.
They're choosing barrels that are saying, these are to our standards. We're either going to put them in our warehouse, blend them together, or with Nancy Fraley's situation, she's going to put them in, you know, Armagnac, sherry, cognac cask, and we're going to see what's going to happen. You have, with any situation, you have no idea what's going to happen when you start putting things in other barrels. No idea. Right. You have no.
It could suck. It could be terrible, right? Like, it's a huge
with anything, even if you were distilling the product. like with Starlight, they're distilling and then they're putting in other barrels. You have no idea what these things are going to turn out into. So you're at the same point as any other distillery, but you have a lot more overhead and you have a lot less people buying into your brand. So you're almost, not like say worse off, but there's a lot more on the line. And especially if you don't come from this world, if you haven't worked at every other distillery and bounced around from every place in Kentucky, which is normal and no knock on that, but that's what normal people in the business do.
Mhm.
If you've worked at Wild Turkey, you've worked, at Jim Beam, you've worked at, Buffalo Trace, you've done your rounds. It's very normal to follow that succession to wherever you decide to land, in your glory years, so to say, or you're from the family of the Beam, Russells, and so on and
Right.
so forth. So I respect so much of what they're doing, because not only do you have a lot less control, but you don't have these big, huge corporations to fall back on.
Yeah. And I know, like, specifically with, I've watched enough of Aaron's lives from Smoke Wagon to follow what he does. And I would assume at a scalable level, like what Pinhook is having to deal with now, what Barrel is having to deal with now, they're not tasting every barrel they purchase.
Yeah.
They're getting a phone call from a barrel broker that says, we have 100 barrels that are all 6 years old and they're this mash bill. Do you want them?
Yeah.
And you may purchase them, sight unseen, so to speak.
Yeah, semi-blindly.
And when they show up, they may be terrible. They may be good. You have no idea. There may be 1 out of 40 barrels that are worthwhile for you, and you have to hold the rest of them. But you work your way through them, and this is where the blender comes in.
Mm-hmm.
So important. And that, I've got the guys from Penelope are going to join me in a month or two, because I want to talk to them about this specifically. Yeah. But like you taste these series of barrels and you say, okay, well, there's a flavor here and there's a flavor here and there's a flavor here. And if I put these together, I may get something. And there's a distinct art form. You're like, distilling is an art form, right? It absolutely is. And aging is an art form. But Kentucky bourbon and whiskey in the North America specifically has not done a whole lot towards blending or given even respect to blending. Like blended whiskey almost is a dirty word in the United States, but I think that's not going to be the case in the very near term future, because that's the only way you're going to be able to get new and unique flavors and be able to do a ton of things. But like saying, okay, this one, I think this one has an off taste, but there's 3 flavors in here I really like, and I can cover it with this other one. Like being able to put that together, there's an artistry there, and we're going to start seeing more and more of that. And that's where the future, I think, of bourbon goes in the United States, if bourbon stays up. If it doesn't get replaced with American single malt whiskey or Armagnac, Cognac, or whatever else.
Me personally, I with my very little experience of watching this trend move, I think it's going to take quite a bit of time for bourbon to start to decline. Mm-hmm. I think bourbon's going to fluctuate, and I think we are going to be more open to blending, or at least I personally believe we need to be.
Right.
Not everything can be of a purist thing, because like you said, Scotch and other whiskeys, blending is what you do. You do not blend other types of whiskeys, and it is an art form, and it might be a little a little dramatic to say, but I feel like you have these distilleries and they're creating the paint, and then these blenders are going through and creating the painting, and it's writing a story. And that's what I think that I love so many blended pieces, many blended bourbons, whiskeys, is because alone, I think the whiskey, the bourbon would have been really good, but all together, it writes the story. And bluegrass specifically, and I've had people tell me like these analogies of all of this, and I'm a little bit jaded, and I feel like a lot of it is bullshit, because I don't have that like spiritual thing about me. I don't have the ability to see things like metaphorically like a lot of people can. But when I tried the bluegrass when we first got it, it was like, I get it. It's like waves. Like the water's like out, and then like the waves come up, they crash into you, and then they kind of go up. Or like as you watch fog come across water. And it's like, it sounds like total bullshit, but when you sit down and have a whiskey that makes you think of things like that, you'll find whiskeys that are like, damn, like, I guess it wasn't bullshit. That's kind of awesome how that did that.
So you just said that you don't have that spiritual portion of it, but then you described
I know something
a
really
spiritual
experience.
there's a con-
I ain't no bitch, okay?
hold on. Let me
Oh.
go back to this. Where did I write this down? You said something along the lines of I'm a difficult person or a complicated person. I can't remember what it was.
I'm all of those. I'm hard to please.
That's what it was. I'm hard to please,
Yeah.
right? But that can come with complication. That's a unique thing. And
You
that's-
added the complicated yourself, okay? Gosh, stop judging me.
Or maybe Ian sent that to me on the side, and he was like, "She's complicated," you know. Whatever.
I am.
No, he didn't send that. I'm not trying to get him in trouble.
ornery. I'm complicated. I'm not a morning person. I'm literally the worst. I'm the worst.
You know, I think I would disagree with that. I mean, you're not planning trips with your family because somebody's gonna die soon. So you don't
No,
get to
I'm
carry
just
the worst here.
avoiding them, and then just send me the invite when they do die. What's worse? I don't know. At least you're celebrating life while they're alive.
You know, there's I guess maybe there's some benefit to that.
Yeah.
Somebody asked way earlier, have you ever used any nosing kits?
I have never used a nosing kit, no, but there is a really fantastic, it's actually a fragrance shop in Detroit, and they are just super amazing. They make their own custom fragrances, and they've put on for myself, and then as well for my group, they've done a molecular tasting and nosing course about whiskey. So so Ian and I did it together, and then I did it separately with Female Whiskey Society, and I'm planning on hosting another one with the ladies here in the next couple of months. So what you do is the owner is a chemical engineer and by trade, so he used to work in automotive chemical engineering, and he quit and opened up a fragrance shop, and it's called Sufmato, and it's in Detroit. So they're a fragrance shop by day and a cocktail bar by night. So they make the fragrances, and then at night they make cocktails, and they pair their fragrances with all of their cocktails. So you'll either get one of their fragrances sprayed on a napkin or sprayed on like a ribbon and wrapped around the stem of their glass. And so he's hosted a couple of classes for us. So what he'll do is he'll send you a half a dozen bourbons or whiskeys, sorry, not bourbons, but whiskeys. And then he will send you the chemical form that makes up the scent that you smell or you taste in that whiskey. So I believe, and I may be wrong, ethyl acetate, if I recall correctly, is essentially banana. And that is why you taste and smell banana in Jack Daniels, because it is one of the highest concentrations of chemicals in their whiskey. So like those are the things you go over in this class is you smell the chemical, you smell the whiskey, then you taste it, and then you kind of go back and forth. But besides that, nosing kits I've never done, but I've done a couple of his courses.
So what it sounds like to me is that you and Sufmato need to create a Female Whiskey Society nosing kit that you could then sell to
I've
people.
actually talked to him about nosing kits before in the past, because like I've seen the Nose Your Bourbon. It's a fantastic kit, but I'd love something more molecular. I'm a chemistry nerd. One of my short stints in my life is I was going to school for chemical engineering. So I did that for a short time being, and then I got bored of that. So before whiskey, I was really into beer. And so I've always wanted to work in fermentation, but necessarily more like geared towards the beer industry. So I'm total nerd as far as that, and I've actually talked to him about doing a chemical forward nosing kit, and it was something he had interest in, and he's doing really crazy things. We've gone in there, he's dehydrated spirits and then reconstituted them to make cocktails out of them. So he's doing some really cool stuff in his store. But I don't, do I need more things to do?
I'm just trying to add to the list. I'm just trying to help you in the end
Hey,
here.
I'm a hustler.
Look,
I don't need money. Like, I mean, who doesn't need money?
right.
But like, I just love the opportunity to make more of it.
Right. I mean, the more money you make, the longer you can extend your trip to Thailand, Bali.
I'll just never come back.
Well, I mean, you can just travel the world on your knows your kit bourbon, or knows your bourbon kit.
Knows your kit.
Right.
Knows your Eartha kit.
One of the things that like you can add to it is that, you know, women evolutionarily, biologically are better tasters and smellers than men are. So if you're signing off on it, like there's even more evidence.
Right? I've not seen the studies behind it, but I've heard several people say that.
That was part of what the episode I did a year ago. I talked about that a little bit and just kind of dug into the science, because I follow a similar vein where once I get into a thing, I'm like, now I've got to know all the things. And then whenever I'm like, I can't understand this, then I'm like, hey, wife, I need you to read this and then explain it to me like I was 8, so I can understand it.
Can you bring it down a few grade levels?
Right. Yeah. Like I need you to go and read this, you know, this scientific white paper and then give it to me like I'm a common person. So it is there's a lot of science behind it and why it happened evolutionarily. Like you're ultimately responsible for, you know, potentially feeding another human being. And so evolutionarily you become more sensitive to potential off flavors or negative flavors, which means you're also going to be heightened for good and positive flavors because you're wanting to make sure that offspring live forever, right? Like at least as long as they can. But you said something and it triggered a question. How many different majors and or areas did you attempt in college?
Well, I started out, my first stint at college was elementary education with a specialization in autism. Oh, no, back up. Okay, hold on. Okay, first one was clinical psychology with a specialization in autism. I have an affinity for that. I have 2 nephews with autism, and it's something I was extremely drawn to. Then I came home, and then I went into early childhood education. That's 2. And then I left again, and I don't know what I was doing in that time. Probably nothing. Probably just drinking a lot. And then what did I do from there? Oh, God. I know I did chemical engineering. I did that for a while. I did culinary. And then I just did education again. So maybe-ish 5-ish.
I think I counted 6 in there. But
okay, 6. I mean, whatever.
Well, I guess you can go back. You can go back to 5 because the final one was sort of a summation of the first 4 that you talked about.
Education, psychology, and in engineering.
Right. Well, there's no shade there because I don't know how long you went to college. I went to college for 2 years.
I had like 800 credits and not one goddamn thing. I could not graduate tomorrow if they would give me like an associate because they felt bad for me.
No, I literally had like 180 to 200 credits when I graduated with my
I have a shit ton of credits, but I have nothing to get me anywhere.
It was one of those things where I got
a college degree. I have nothing.
You gotta get there's a general studies degree. They can give you a general.
I didn't have enough credits, not in any one thing, because for a general studies, I had so many credits in culinary. They don't go towards general studies. They give you like 8 credits, and they're like, okay, that'll do. Like they're like, we don't accept that as
there's not enough of a transfer for culinary there, but it was one of those things that I went back and I got my master's degree solely so I could prove to myself like
my master's.
No. This is a petty degree. This is a petty degree that I got. I got it to prove to myself that I could actually finish a degree like on time and with decent grades.
Masters. You clearly finished the first one. I have nothing.
After 10 years.
So I went
10
for 10 years.
I got a bullshit
And I got
business. I got a
nothing.
bullshit business degree. Like you could probably take like 4 courses and be done with it.
It's something. Oh, I may have went. No, I don't think I went for business. That sounds like something I should have gone for.
Yes, Tim Evans said it, and it is absolutely correct. There is some school that you can transfer to, and you will get they will graduate you.
So there's a bunch of like bullshit schools around here, and there's these like, I don't know if you've ever seen like the SNL skits for them where they talk about like Everest, and you can go for like dope shopping and.
Yep. No, I worked for a bullshit school for a period of time as a financial aid counselor. And it was less than a year. And I was like, I feel terrible about doing this job because we are literally just taking people's money and handing them paper back.
Yeah, that's what you do. I mean, I feel like there's so much experience I got out of it. I didn't enjoy, even though I went for a really long time, I didn't enjoy going to school.
Mhm.
And when I went away to college, I just never went. Like I went, but then I just like slept a lot. I think I went there for the cafeteria and to nap.
Most schools have this pesky thing where they expect you to show up for classes.
They don't give a fuck if you show up, but
they give a fuck if you don't show up for 2 semesters. Like if you don't show up for anything for 2 semesters, because they have this problem where they've got to like manage their retention rates and make sure students are advancing academically, or the federal government starts looking at them for funding, and they're like, wait, you don't have an. So it's not that they really care. They're just like, you're going to cut off our money. And so that's how I learned that, like, if you don't show up for a year, then they're like, hey, you got to take a break from school for a year.
Oh, they just put me on academic probation and made me.
That was after the first semester. The first semester was academic probation. Then there's an academic suspension.
First semester I did fine. Second semester I was on academic probation.
Back to back academic probation.
And then I went to a community college. So what I think is more important is how many colleges did I go to? Because I think that's more than how many.
4? I think I hit 3 or 4. I can't remember what the number was.
Oakland, Mott, OCC. Was it only 3? I feel like it was more. I don't know. Oh, but how many did I apply for? Because then I was like gonna go to Wayne for a BA, and then I was like, I have to fill out paperwork, and I'm kind of tired today.
There's a lot of correlation.
I got accepted to like 8 schools, but I only actually physically went to 3.
Right. There's a lot of correlation here. I feel this deeply.
And we're all drinking whiskey on a Wednesday night, coping with our feelings.
Right. Absolutely. But there's successful careers here, like, obviously.
And I will say that I tell people it's a lot of luck, but I mean, I worked my ass off. And I really, really worked really, really hard. And I've treated the company that I work for as if it was my own company for the past 7, 8, 9 years, however many years it's been. And I'm lucky that I signed on, even though it was a Craigslist ad, I signed on to a company that really exploded. And I had a CEO that really is just really good at what he does. Mm-hmm. And so I feel very lucky, but I would not be where I am if it wasn't for putting in the work. At the end of the day, it's like, okay, maybe I didn't put in the work for school, but I definitely put in the work. It's just different.
So then why are you using the term lucky? Like you put in the work? Like
I know. Well, I think part of it is your stars align and you're the right place at the right time. But if you don't show up, then I think that's
right. Like the luck part was being there. The rest of it is on you.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. And I think school is great for some people. I mean, Ian's very, very smart and has a master's as well. And mm-hmm. There's a lot of places that I know around here that I could never walk in and get a job because mm-hmm. I don't have a piece of paper.
Yep.
And that just seems insane to me because I think there's so many well-qualified individuals out there. And I think really college, all it says is that for 4 to 8 years, you could
10.
sit in a classroom.
You showed up. This is the thing. In the short period of time that I worked as a financial aid counselor for a shill of a university, and one of my wife's coworkers, who was very much a later in life non-traditional student, she was wanting to go back to school just to prove it to herself. And I was like, look, it doesn't really matter what university you go to, with the exception of maybe like Harvard, Yale, or MIT.
Yeah.
If you show up for every class, if you go to the teacher's classroom or to the teacher's office for office hours and consult with them, you will get a C. Even if you fail everything, you'll get a C because you put in the effort, you showed up, you did all of the things, and they say you're making progress. And C's get degrees. Like you'll finish. And she ultimately did, and she was able to get a better job, even though it was a bullshit degree. They just saw the piece of paper, and that was the thing. Like these shill of a university, you can find somewhere that will give you that piece of paper, but it doesn't make you a better employee. You make yourself the better employee.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm, nothing to do with bourbon, obviously, but I think it actually is connected to bourbon, because I'm one of those people that I'm a loyalist, and I think integrity is a very, very big thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm of the mindset that I think you have to be very careful in this community. I think there is a community, but I also think there's people that are using it for personal gain.
Mm-hmm.
And I totally respect those people that are looking to make this as, to make money and a financial thing. I totally understand that. But I think with anything, you have to be very, very cognizant of the people around you and what their motives are, regardless of what you're into, whether it's whiskey or whatever it is. And I find that connects very directly to whiskey, because I think there's a lot of people out here in this community that or are influencers that maybe didn't get here very organically, and they bought followers or they buy likes, and they have bullshit tasting notes. But at the end of the day, what does that get you? Where does that get you?
A false sense of superiority. That's ultimately what it gets you.
Very false, because really, in actuality, your 20,000, 30,000, whatever thousand followers are just a bunch of fake people from another country and somebody said it, and it wasn't even anything to do with whiskey. And I heard it the other day, and it says you can have X amount of followers on any social media platform. And but most of them, 90, whatever, 80, 99% of them, whatever percent of them, they're bystanders.
Yep.
They're bystanders, and they're just sitting, hopefully they're getting something positive out of what you're saying, but they're just bystanders. And I think we put so much pressure, people in general, and brands put a lot of pressure. I've had so many people tell me, well, we can't pay you this to promote our product because you don't have X amount of followers, or we normally pay this for this amount of followers and this amount of engagement. And it's like, well, that's fine. We don't have to work together. Not everyone's meant to work with each other, but it's like, we put so much pressure on these numbers. It's like, I could wake up tomorrow and have 100,000 followers. All I have to do is pay for them.
Right.
All I have to do is do a giveaway a week, like some people do. And that's fine if you want to do giveaways, but I want people to get something from me, and it not to be just to continue to take and take, because there's so many people taking out there.
Yep.
So many people giving every little last bit piece of them. And it's like, but for what?
Yeah, it's Chris Blattner, the urban bourbonist, and he's also the head of the bourbon charity organization. He and I had this conversation exactly, where we were talking about, whether you're an influencer or not, and engagement. And I have an app that I keep on my phone, and luckily nobody can accuse me of purchasing any followers, because to purchase followers, you have to the minimum purchase is 1,000, and I don't have 1,000 followers. So the benefit is that no one can accuse me of purchasing anything. But
I'm just cheap, so I'm never going to purchase anything for more bourbon.
I guess let me back up. I have purchased followers, but not for myself.
Yeah.
So what that means
I'm not going to purchase followers, but I will tell you, I will purchase more bullshit to start a new business.
No, what happened was one of my wife's friends was getting into TikTok just to screw with her kid, and she was like, she told her kid, she was like, I bet I can get more followers in the next 10 days than you can. And so she was doing it organically. Like she was just trying to grow her own, just to screw with her kid, because her teenage kid was like, no, I don't ever, like, no, you could never do that. And I came across this information and I was like,
I'm going to buy your followers.
Absolutely. I'm going to buy 1,000 followers.
See, that's not like a real like thing. I would totally do that.
Right. But
not for myself.
I didn't tell anybody. I just did it.
Right? There's nothing to do with you.
But then I started feeling bad because I was like, well, I don't want her to, like, when these followers eventually fall off, because that's what happens when you purchase followers, they eventually fall off. I don't want her to feel like she's lost her platform. So I was like, I fessed up to my wife. I was like, listen, here's what I did on my own. She doesn't know about this. And she was like, okay, well, I'll tell her. She told her, and immediate message was like just a hand clap, bravo, love, because we're just trying to fuck with a teenager that is trying to be shitty to their mom. Like that.
As soon as my kid gets on social media, I'm like, out. I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore.
Our children are so technologically deficient in an intentional fashion. Like, when we did the thing, whenever our youngest child was born, when she got old enough to start like playing with devices, we bought her an iPad mini, and she had it and she was able to do stuff. And when the second kid came along, then they had devices, they have, things to do. One day we just didn't recharge the iPad.
Yeah.
And they never asked about it.
Yeah.
And
our son has the Amazon one, the Kindle.
Yeah.
But he can only play games on it, but he very rarely plays it. He likes video games.
Yeah. And
he's obsessed with Mario.
These kids have no idea of technology. So I don't even worry about them being on social media, because like the oldest child is into like competitive dance now, because she chose it. She decided she wanted to do it. Like, it was one of those things. They sent the email, like, she's been doing dance. We were like, hey, they sent an email. Do you want to do competitive dance? We were just telling her because we thought she would say no. We're going to make the offer. And she's like, no, I want to try that. And I was like, oh, backfire.
It's like so many leotards and tutus.
Well, it's not even that. It's like we've got to leave her there for an extended period of time, which means she's got to have a cell phone now. Ooh. In case she needs to get a hold of us, because I'm not sitting in the parking lot for 3 hours.
No,
I'm going home.
Give her one of those cricket phones.
Right. She forgets it and forgets to charge it, and like has no concept of it. She's gonna be in middle school next year. Like, some of her friends have cell phones. She just doesn't get it. And I'm like, this is the best. Like,
that's working out really well. So our son is 5, so he's in kindergarten. And they're doing all of these like social media awareness courses in school. And it's like, okay, like, I want my child to be aware, but at 5, like, why do we need to introduce, like, so they like have these things where they draw pictures of them being good, like, good technology users. And it's like, oh, I use my laptop only when mama and dada says I can. And it's just like, but they're 5.
It's entirely because there is a group of people who have a group of children who have unfettered access to technology at very, very young ages.
Yep, I agree.
It's really my wife is a teacher, and so
Speaking of, these comments are getting hot and sexy in here.
Well, they've been here most of the night, but Tim was moderating for me, and now he's gone. So, or he may be here, I don't know, but
he just really wants us to see hot, sexy stripping without clothing, because usually that's what stripping is.
They should go away at some point in time. I don't
know, but I know what I'm doing later.
I mean, I can send you the link now that they're gone. I'll send you whatever link you need, I guess. I have a strong feeling that you're going to get your identity stolen. Like, that's what's going to happen.
Hey, I got student loans for those 8,000 degrees. If you want to pay them, they are all yours. You can pretend.
This is the best thing that education does is like, you want to steal my identity? Fine. Take
Yeah.
my 550 credit score. Good luck.
It's the only thing you can't file bankruptcy with the student loans. What the F is that about?
But it's also the only thing that will not come out of your estate if you die.
Oh, well, I don't plan on dying. Okay, you're got this thing with death.
So
You got this thing with death. You need
no,
to.
there's a reason here. So in the least ethical thing I've ever done in my life. No. The least ethical thing I ever did in my life. I was a financial aid counselor at a university, and I know that if someone were to pass away, those student loans die with them. They don't come out of the estate. They don't do anything. And one of my students, I had heard a rumor that one of my students had potentially passed away, and so I requested every single dollar I could on his behalf, so that money would go to his family.
Oh,
and then it would just wipe away. Terribly unethical. Like, there may have been a crime that was committed, but it was long enough ago.
That's very illegal, and maybe you want to delete that part of.
No, I'm not worried about it because I have not worked there for over 10 years, and I know there's a statute of limitations, and it's usually around. So
you've already looked at the details. Like, girl,
that's not the most illegal thing I've ever done, so don't worry about that. But well, I won't talk about anything else online. But that's the reason I knew. So it's not like I was like, hey, here's the thing that I can do for this family. It's like I can send them some of the federal government's money that they're going to eventually, get wiped out anyway. So the third time, Tim is back. I don't know if he's blocking stuff or if he's talking about us, I think, potentially damaging long-term things. All right, so we are at beyond 2 hours. You're now the official champion of how long of a live stream we can run, and I can go as long as we need to, but I also want to be aware of the time that you have. Like, you have a job, you have a kid, you have a husband, you have things to take care of. I don't want to steal any more time from you than possible.
It's not a big deal. Kids in bed. I mean, 10:46 here. Kids been in bed a long time.
Yeah, it's 9:46 here. Our kids go to bed at 8:30. Actually, one of them came luckily she came up while you were talking. She was like, "Hey, is it time to go to bed?" I was like, "Yes," because my wife wasn't here. She just came back. But before, I'm not necessarily wrapping up, but before we, kind of just wander for a while, links, things you've got going on, things you want to sell, whatever.
Yeah. So femalewhiskeysociety.com is the website. I've been really bad with it. I'll be honest. I haven't been updating it as much, but you can find out where you can get merchandise and all of those good things. I would show you the 3-quart bottle, but I've got one right here. I was like, I've got a 3-quart bottle holding up my screen right now. So, the 3-quart. I have plenty of the 3-quart, tons of the 3-quart. Please buy the 3-quart. I'm going to be buried with it. My student loans will not go away, or my student loans will go away. This 3-quart won't. And I will say, I think 3-quart is one of those tough ones because either people don't know enough about it to buy it, or they have preconceived notions. But I will tell you, I take great pride in what I do with picking whiskey. And like I said, integrity and loyalty are one of the biggest things to me. I would never expect anyone to spend their hard-earned money on something that I thought was mediocre. And I'm very, very picky. I tried 11 single barrels, maybe more that day. I got very drunk, but I'll tell you, I picked this way before I got super drunk. And this one is it's 115.8 proof, but it was something about it. It was I think it was fantastic, and it deserves to be drank. And Tim, he bought like 12 of them. So, that one, and Bluegrass is gone. So I shouldn't really talk about it, but the Bluegrass is gone.
I absolutely, I had 2 bottles of it. I've got one that I'm drinking. I gave one to my local liquor store, and it's got all the things. The Bluegrass one has all the things that I want. It's a dark flavor, and I don't know a better way to phrase it now, but it's got a dark flavor, and I like things that are dark. Like my coffee is black because I want it to be dark and bitter like my soul.
Oh my God, I say the same thing about myself.
Yeah, it's a thing, but the 3-quart is like, I bought 2 bottles of it, gave one of them away to a friend who runs a local Facebook group. They're they're good bottles. And what do you usually do? Like, is this a Line Morgan's Pocket fund, or what do you do with your money from the barrels, if you want to answer?
No, I do not line pockets. The bluegrass, that one we didn't do anything particularly with, but New Riff and Three Chord all went to New Riff has already all gone to charity. Any profits from the New Riff have all gone to charity. The Three Chord, as soon as we sell it, and all the profits will be going to music charity here in Metro Detroit. We have partnered with it's called the School of Rock. They're based out of Royal Oak, Michigan, and it is by during the day and nights and weekends. It's a standard a school where kids can go and get music lessons. They can go get guitar lessons, drumming lessons, and then they have a band that they put together and do shows. But for those kids that need to some sort of assistance with paying for their lessons, paying for their instruments, the school has a 501c and will be donating all of that money to the 501c. The New Riff was partnered with a few other different charities. So the New Riff I did with that short candle sale and a few other events that I did throughout all of last year. The New Riff went to Dignity Matters, which supports low underfunded communities, as well as homeless females get access to feminine hygiene products. And then we did the Women's Law Center out of Chicago, which provides attorneys, lawyers, litigation support for women who are underserved or were wrongfully terminated and need some sort of representation. Whatever it may be, they offer low and no cost attorney services. Habitat for Humanity. I just try, I try and find grassroots charities to donate to, and then mixing in like a few bigger ones. So the barrel picks I do, I'm not looking to make any money. That for me, that's just I'm putting all my own money out. But for me, that's just a way to support my community. I don't need to make money off of these barrels. I really enjoy the process. I feel like the process of going and doing a barrel pick is so fun and exciting and so much more that I'm getting way more out of that process than I ever would out of the money that would come from it. So anything from the barrel picks all goes to charity. I don't keep any of that. If there's any money kept, it's just to be able to afford to do the next pick.
Yeah. And I guess maybe if you didn't know beforehand what the answer was going to be, the way I phrased that question may have been slightly inappropriate, but I already knew the answer because I've purchased the bottles from you in the past and I know where the money is going. And I mean, even if it did go in your pocket, it doesn't matter because the bottle's still delicious, but you're not making a ton of money off of a single barrel. Even if you were collecting that, you're not making a ton of money. It's not a clear.
What was really nice with the Three Chord is the Three Chord themselves offered to lower our costs substantially as they're part of the donation to the music charity. So costs would have, I think normally, I don't even remember the cost, but it was normally $50 a bottle. They lowered it to like $30 some a bottle. And those aren't the accurate numbers. I just don't remember. So they lowered the cost significantly so they could give to the charity as well. Because I mean, Three Chord is a music brand as well. My husband comes from a music family and we just wanted to do something with music. So, I like to do female-oriented, female-based charities, but I felt with the Three Chord, it was just right to do something music-related.
Yeah. I mean, my family is going to connect with that pretty deeply because within arm's reach, there is an acoustic electric mandolin. There's an acoustic electric guitar. There's an electric guitar over here. There's an electric bass. And there's a trumpet. One of those instruments belonged to me. And I can let you guess which one it was, but the rest of them all belong to my wife.
I hope it was the trumpet.
It absolutely was for middle school. And we keep it in a similar vein. The only reason I keep it is because she teaches in a middle school.
Okay.
And in Kentucky, that's usually whenever we start introducing band.
Yep.
And regularly she'll have a sixth grade student that enters in a middle school that wants to get involved in band, but they don't have the financial means to purchase an instrument. And we've got one, so we lend it out. Every year a new kid gets one. And then whenever the kid gets to the end of the year, they're like, hey, I think I want to keep this up. We find a way to make sure that they have an instrument going forward. Or they say, I hate this and I don't want to go on. No one wasted the money on the instrument that they don't want. They had an opportunity to try it out. We pass it on to the next kid. So that's, I connect with the 3-chord thing on a deeper level because I love music. I'm just not, I can't play anything.
Yeah, I was in choir. The only thing I have to offer is a voice, which is an instrument, but I can't do any of that.
I can't do that either. I can run a soundboard. That's as far as I go. Like if someone's like, hey, you want
something? Yeah, no, I was in choir from 8th grade all the way through senior year, and actually was very lucky to sing at Carnegie Hall in New York City just before my senior year. So I was in choir for quite some time, and that's very much a part of, this whole thing as well. I could never play an instrument. I don't. If I'm not good at something naturally, I just won't do it. I'll try it and I'll just move on.
Yeah. I played trumpet in middle school, and I was never like, you get ranked by seat whenever you play an instrument in band.
I do know that.
I was not the last seat ever. Okay.
Second to the last?
Yes. I made sure I was better than one other kid. Now, at one time, I was first seat. Ooh. Because we had flu wipe through the school and none of the kids were there to test.
I thought first day you got put there alphabetically.
No, because me and the last chair were the only ones that didn't get the flu. We were there that week, so we tested.
You just had the strongest immune system. Hey,
exactly. I by having a strong immune system, I was the first seat for like 4 days.
For something.
It does, but I was never last. I made sure I was never last.
So I was a second alto, and I always wanted to be a tenor, and my choir teacher would never let me join the boys. But it's like, why? I want to be with the boys. I want to be a tenor. She wouldn't let me.
No. Yeah, I know why I was second to last seat, because I was not good. I just was not as bad as.
Well, I was fabulous, and I was not the last seat.
I mean, you went to Carnegie Hall, so it means something.
Well, I mean, we all went. The entire class went, but we were invited.
They could have left you behind. They could have been like, "Look,
yeah, this seat's taken."
Like, absolutely, or like, "Look, we're trying to make a good impression, and so we're going to need you to stay here."
Yeah, so we need somebody to run the classroom while we're all gone.
We need somebody to watch all the stuff in the bus while we're outside singing. Can you do that?
I'm the bus watcher.
Right. I would have been the bus watcher. Absolutely would have been the bus watcher.
I get that.
Yeah.
No, I'm too much like, I need to be the star of the show.
Nope.
No. We had to sing a 35-minute piece in Latin.
In Latin?
Yeah, without stopping. 35.
That's like a dead language. Like, no.
Right? 35 straight minutes of singing. We were on stage singing one song for 35 minutes.
Who was there that understood it?
Nobody.
From, like, I hear the notes, but
nobody. I don't think anyone was actually there. I could not tell you how many people were in the audience.
I mean, it doesn't matter. It's still an experience. Like, whether there was anybody there or not.
Yeah,
like,
to be
they let you stand on the stage and sing.
Yeah, and to tell people, like,
I sang at Carnegie Hall.
Yeah, I mean, so did me and the other, 200 students from the other schools that went that day.
But none of those other 200 students started a female whiskey society. So see, they don't have
they didn't
to talk about it.
So it's funny though. I was in a meeting the other day. I was in a meeting and on Thursday, and my internet went out, so I couldn't get in. It was a Zoom, and I couldn't get back in my meeting on my work computer. So I got in on my phone and realized it came up as Female Whiskey Society, which I work for my company is very casual. Like I said, my CEO is very young.
They're not going to be bothered by it.
It's not a big deal. It's not like I work for like a corporation, but I joined the Zoom as Female Whiskey Society. And I was like, oh, hey, sorry about that. My internet's going out. And the call I was on was with a consultant that we hired to help with this project, with this migration that we're doing. And he was like, well, he's like, oh, female whiskey society. It's like, oh, it's just another life that I live. Don't worry about it. He goes, well, I want to know more about this. I'm like, no, it's fine. It's like nothing.
I've made that mistake as well, and most of the people I work with wouldn't care either.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't need them to be a part of this life.
Yeah. Well, a lot of the people I work with are young, and when we talk casually, I bring up whiskey, and I'm like, oh yeah, I have this this little Instagram thing that I do where I talk about whiskey, and they're like, oh, what is it? And it's like, and then so I tell them, and it's like, gosh, I hope they don't follow me. It's so weird. So that's the weirdest thing is I don't want all these people to follow me because for me, I just want to be me.
Right.
And the weird thing was when people I worked with started being my friends on Facebook, and I suppressed that for the longest time. And then it's all these people and then family. It's okay, well, I guess Facebook's over. And then I started using Instagram. And it's I felt like Instagram could be the place I could just be me. Right. And if I wanted to go off on a tangent about work, I could, but now I can't. And it's oh, I love work. It's so great. Everything's perfect. The reason why I drink.
Right. Yeah. I intentionally avoid talking about work as much as possible. And there's only maybe 2 people I work with that know that this is even a thing for me.
Oh, okay.
And they all found it by accident. There's a way that it all sort of linked up because I don't in the same way I don't need my family showing up to be like, oh, we support you because you're a family. Yeah. I don't need my coworkers being like, hey, we're here because we think you're a decent guy or whatever.
You're great. So I will say my coworkers are really amazing. And the coworkers that I'm close with, they buy all my bottles. Mm-hmm. My CEO has he has all my bottles minus the Bluegrass, just because I wouldn't let him buy them.
The one where you rearranged his bottles in his office?
Yes, it is. Okay. Yep.
Once again, Instagram creeping. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's true. Yeah. So I was in the office the other day and I was like, why are my bottles in the back? So he's the reason why I really knew anything about whiskey in general, is because he was he's a big Johnny Walker Blue fan. Mm-hmm. And so every year for Christmas, a group of us would always buy him a really nice bottle of Johnny Walker Blue. And then I started really getting into bourbon, and so now I take him a bourbon. Right. So this year, instead of buying him a Johnny Walker Blue, so last year I bought him a Johnny Walker Blue, but he had just had a baby, and they had the Zodiac Johnny Walkers that came out. So I bought, or the Chinese New Year, not Zodiac, right. Sorry. The Chinese New Year Zodiac ones came out. So I bought him it was the Year of the Rat, and which just seems really weird. But so I bought him that bottle because his son was born. Right. And so I gave him that bottle for Christmas last year. And so for this year, it's I don't want to take him Johnny Walker. I'm so ingrained in bourbon. So I took him a Smoke Wagon uncut, unfiltered.
Nice.
And our thing is that, so at a New Year's Eve, we all there's a group of us that all go in the office, and it's been a tradition for years. We all go in the office, we all drink together, and we watch as our final sales numbers come in. Mm-hmm. And so I took the Smoke Wagon in, the uncut, unfiltered. And I was I know I always bring you Johnny Walker, but I felt this year we just you deserve to have a good bourbon. And he likes bourbon. But usually the bourbon he buys is, he has a cousin that works in liquor distribution. So he is the starter pack of bourbon.
Right.
And so I wanted to bring him something he didn't have.
Something unique.
Yeah. So I brought him the Smoke Wagon, and we opened it up together, and he's like, this is so fucking good. I'm see?
Right.
There's good stuff out there. So, so he likes bourbon, and I was in the office the other day, and I was like, why is my bottle in the back? So he has the New Riff, he has the 3-quart, and they all, he drinks out of them. They all have something gone. So I just, I rearranged all his bottles so my bottles were in the front, and I sent him a text. I said, I had to take something to his office. I said, "Hey, your computer's on your desk. And by the way, I rearranged your bourbon and whiskey. So my stuff was in the front." And he was just like, he laughed, he laughed. He thought it was funny. But it's like, yeah, it's like, I want my stuff in the front. I'm not hiding it back. No one's coming in your office because of COVID, but my stuff is going to be in the front.
Yeah. So you guys are still in a remote environment. You're not completely back in yet.
So I will never go back. I don't need to. With my new role, there's no need for, and everybody I work with is remote. I work with the Philippines, Ukraine, Poland, and my IT company is out of Louisville. So there's no reason for me to go back. So I probably won't ever need to.
Yep. We have a presence in town here, so we'll be back in office relatively soon. But some of our development assets are in Pune, some are in Egypt, some are in Basel, Switzerland. We're all over the world, so most of my job is remote in the same fashion. But they'll make us all go back into the office because we have our support staff are all here stateside.
Oh, see, I like working from home. I hated it at first. I'm very close with the people that I work in the office, like, my CEO and our sales people. I'm very close with them on like a personal level beyond working level. We're very close. We kind of started this all together. We're all really young and we've grown up with each other. We're really close. And at first I hated it. I was very stressed out with working from home. We lived in a much smaller home. I was not into it. When I got this new role back in October, I was like, nope, this is kind of nice. I kind of like this.
Right.
Ian's going back in May 2 to 3 times a week. And it's like, you're just going to leave me home alone? I'm just going to be alone? I was like, who's going to answer the door when bourbon gets delivered? Like, you're
right. It's up to you, or they're going to have to leave it at the door.
They're not going to. Sometimes I actually ask for a signature, which is weird, but
they're starting to ask again. I know that's
well, so in Michigan, it's actually illegal to ship alcohol. Like beer and wine is fine, but it's illegal to ship like liquor, spirits.
Right.
So they still ask, like we have to sign for it, and it's a whole thing. But depending on how it gets shipped, like if it's from an actual distillery or liquor like distributor, it'll still come the entire way, but they want a signature.
Right.
So
I know, like a lot of the places that I was ordering from, they require a signature, but like UPS went touchless, and so they're like, we're supposed to have a signature. I just need to hand it to an adult. That's all that they were after. But they're now like, hey, we need your signature again. I'm like, well, shit, I don't want to do that.
So in the beginning of COVID, I was drinking a lot of wine before I found bourbon. So I was doing a wine subscription. So I'd get like 12 bottles of wine like every 3 weeks, it felt like. So FedEx would deliver. Yeah, don't even do that math. Don't. You're going to get really judgy. Stop it. Don't do the math. But anyway,
it's not that many bottles of wine, though, because there's only 5 glasses of wine in a bottle.
Yeah, I'm the only one drinking it, though.
Right, but if you're looking at over 3 weeks, you're getting 4
bottles of wine.
It's 4 bottles per week. There's 7 days in a week, and like if you break it down, it's really not that bad.
It seems like that bad. Anyway, so FedEx would just like, they put it at the door and then they'd like wait. They'd be like walking back to the truck and it'd be like, oh, they're like, okay, cool, bye. They'd be like in the truck and they'd be like waiting. Oh, okay. It's like, it's COVID. I don't care if you're like 18. You needed wine then. Right. Everybody needed something.
Yeah. It's that the only, you talked about giveaways earlier. The only time I ever did a giveaway was when I broke 400 followers, maybe, I think, on Instagram. And I didn't even do the like everyone share and tag someone. Like, if you follow me, you're a part of it now, and you may win something. And it ended up being my FedEx driver. Like, I didn't even know he followed me, and he didn't know it was me. He just knew I was getting a bunch of stuff. And so I was like, hey man, like you won. And he was like, wait, are you this guy? And I'm like, yeah. He was like, I'm your FedEx driver. I'm like, sweet. I'll just, next time you bring me a bottle, I'll give you this one. I don't even have to ship it anywhere. I don't have to break any laws.
I love that. That's great. Yeah. I like the giveaway. I like getting free stuff, but I just don't. There's a lot of work in doing all of that.
To do one the way that most people do, like
What are you eating, by the way?
trefoils, Girl Scout cookies.
Oh, I've never heard them called. Is trefoils what they're called?
Yeah, so it depends on where you are in the world. So I don't know what they are in Michigan because like Girl Scout cookies changes the name of the cookie based off the region. So I have to look, but it's the I don't know. I don't know what flavor it is. They go really, really well with bourbon. They're the one, the one. They're
I'm very disappointed in Girl Scout cookies these days.
really?
They're not as good as they used to be. I feel like old saying that, but they
Or
are.
maybe your palate's just getting better. Like you don't realize
Well,
how
yeah, I
trash
was
they
a
were before.
chocolatier, so I'm used to really good chocolate, and my favorite was that peanut butter one with the chocolate on it.
Yep.
And now it tastes like dog shit.
Well, I will agree with that. So it's the shortbread cookie. It's the
I'm not a huge shortbread fan.
bourbon. That's the time when they're perfect. They go so well with this.
I was hoping you were eating cheese because I wanted to talk about cheese.
Let's talk about cheese. I'm on board with talking about cheese.
I love cheese.
Yeah.
All kinds of, well, except for the funky ones.
What is the
I
funky
don't
ones?
love all cheese, but
which ones are the funky ones that are the problem? Like, are you like blue cheese is the funky one, or do you have to go farther than that?
No, blue cheese,
Okay.
anything with mold
What about
actively
feta?
on it.
Are you okay with feta?
I like feta, nice and salty.
I like feta in small quantities. Like I can't.
Oh, I think feta should not be just like, you shouldn't just eat a hunk of feta like it's mozzarella.
But people do. Like
people are crazy. We've already determined people are stupid and dumb, and we don't like them.
Yeah. There's a quote that I like to use. It's like it's a philosopher quote. You'll never go broke underestimating the stupidity of the mass populace.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some people eat feta like it's just like I'm gonna bite a hunk of feta. They're stupid.
That's like a lot of salt.
It really is.
Salty. It should be in like a salad.
Yeah, I mean, if it's in a salad, it's spread out.
Where would feta be besides like a salad situation?
On a plate as you're doing a charcuterie board,
no,
people put it on.
Feta does not belong on a charcuterie
because it's sitting right next to the olives.
I like olives, and I don't think olives should be there either.
Really?
Wait, you would put feta next to olives?
I'm not saying I would. I've seen it done.
Things? No.
I've seen it done.
Well, it should be undone because feta and olive should not be next to each other on charcuterie. It's way too salty.
No, I think so. Some people will group their charcuterie board by things that are similar. It's like here's the mustard selection, and here's the salty selection, and here's the meat selection.
Things that should be next to each other that should be eaten together.
I don't. That's
disagree. How I run this. These people sound like anarchists.
They're animals. They're animals. They're rubes, maybe.
They sound like commies.
Commies?
I don't know. Something that's not right.
Do commies do charcuterie boards? I feel like that's not a thing.
It would just be like fish. I don't know. I just still assume all commies.
I don't even know what a commie eats at this point. I'm not entirely sure.
I have no idea. Are there still Wait, Chinese people are communists, right? Well, their country is, not them.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure Russia's still communist too. Like I think that's still a thing.
I mean, they are, but they aren't. They're the most communist, not communist, right?
Right. Like they're a big market for my company, but I think they're also communist.
Yeah. So they're trying to kill my web developers right now. So
no. We have a bunch of people in Ukraine as well.
Oh, okay. So you're fighting both sides.
We have a group called IAMI, which is the Eastern Europe and a bunch of other groups, right? And so Ukraine and Russia, like our Ukraine and Russian people are like they're friends, but the countries are not friends. Like they're like, hey, everything's fine, we like each other, but also our governments are not friendly.
Yeah, people are saying otherwise. Yeah, right. So I've web team in Ukraine, but I have one specifically that lives in Sumy that just got out this past week, which is, I don't pretend like I understand even a shred of what's going on because I can't imagine. So I have 3 total in that group, and then my web team the platform team, they're half Ukraine, half Poland. So they've all had to flee. They're all in Poland right now. So it's, I can't imagine. And I asked the CEO of their company, because we contract through them. I said, what can I do? Like, I feel like there's nothing I can do, but what can I do? And he was like, the only thing we can ask is that you continue to pay them, because like they need to continue to make money. It's like, well, I feel like that goes without saying.
Yeah,
like,
but it doesn't. For a lot of companies, it doesn't. Like that's where we're at as well. Like, these are not contracted employees. These are people that are a part of our corporation that live there.
Yeah.
We're just pay them. Like, make sure they have the means to get out. That, and I saw where a bunch of people were Airbnb-ing in Ukraine. Like, people have their houses up available. You just go and you rent a house in Ukraine for whatever.
Yeah.
And they get the money, and whoever the people that are running that particular thing, they're able to do something with it. And so it's a way.
And they get access to the funds, because I know there's a lot of issues with people getting access to their own.
They're supposedly getting access. And I haven't followed it all the way down, because I haven't Airbnb'd anything in Ukraine myself yet.
Yeah.
But I've seen where several people have done that, and they've gotten responses back from people who were, and we're talking about like pennies on the dollar. Like, you're like $20 a day or something. It's insane.
It's so different than what it is. It's like here. It's completely different as far as, way of living and all of those things, lifestyle. It's just horrible. There's nothing positive about any of that situation. So It's just hard when you deal with people that are living it, and you try to sympathize, empathize, but at the same time, not shed so much light on it, because you want them to be living. You don't want to talk about it, because they need to have some sort of normalcy. Right. I think the hardest thing that I was experiencing, and it's very selfish, but as a parent, it like really slapped me in the face, is when one of the first team members that I had that fled to Poland, he got on we have daily calls, and he got on the call, and I could hear children in the background crying.
Yeah.
And so I knew he had little ones, and it's like, as a parent, it's like, regardless of where you feel you are on the spectrum of politics and this whole situation, as a parent, when somebody just had to pick up, leave their home, and flee thousands of miles to another country, and you can hear their baby. It wasn't that it was a small child, it was a baby,
right,
crying in the background. It's like, as a mother of a young child, it's like,
and you're uncertain of how long you're going to have to live like that. And
they have apartments now. They have long-term apartments now.
If you're there for 2 years, right? So you've got an infant, but if you're there for 2 years, and that infant, who was, let's just say 24 months, doesn't understand anything, is now 4. Right. How do you explain that? Like, you have a 5-6-year-old. Like, if you had to pick everything up and move to somewhere else because of that, like, how do you as a parent explain that? Number one, you've got the fear of like trying to get them to a safe place. Yeah. Then once you're there, there's the emotional toll that comes afterwards, and it's an unspeakable situation. Like, we went through the tornado situation here, like in Western Kentucky, the tornadoes that hit. You guys did some Red Cross stuff. Like, that's the community my wife teaches in.
Yeah,
where all of that happened. We have that conversation, but that was a single solitary event on one day in December.
And it was also a natural weather-related event.
This is people
there's
acting.
Literally no human control over.
Right. This is people acting, and people acting daily. Like, you can't go home because this other thing is happening. Like, I don't know. Like, it's mind-boggling.
It really is. And so, like, the one employee that I had, that he lives in Sumy, which is like one of the farthest eastern cities that got attacked first. They couldn't leave. They were under attack 24/7. Russia finally said that they would allow them to leave, and they would do a ceasefire for like 24 hours or whatever, and people could leave. But as soon as they started to leave, they were getting shot at. They went against their word, right, and were attacking again. And it's just, and my employee, he was able to get out with his family. He brought his family to Poland, and then he came back to the Ukraine. And the company that, so we contract them, so the company they work with are they have a safe place in Ukraine as well. So I think he went back to that safe place. I know it's very depressing things to talk about, but I feel like it affects us so much more besides the very topical, very cosmetic things of gas prices and that kind of bullshit. That's so much more than that.
And I don't put a ton of stock in talking about gas prices because the rest of the world has been paying significantly different prices for gas than us for a very, very, very long time. And it's an unpopular thing to say, but
everything in with COVID, everything has gone up. Everything. I mean, we used to spend $100 at the grocery store. It's now $200. Like life has changed regardless of this situation. I think we need to be very cognizant of what's going on in the world. And I think just being mindful that at the end of the day, we're so very lucky.
Yeah. We're complaining about gas prices, not complaining about someone just blew up the building that I live in.
Yeah. I just, and I think people have a hard time kind of putting that into perspective.
Yeah. And it, I acknowledge that I speak from a place of some degree of privilege because I don't have to worry about gas prices nearly as much, but
100%.
You can still be struggling to whether you can put $5 in your gas tank or not, but you're not worrying about whether a tank is going to drive over you while you're driving to work in the morning, right?
Yeah. Or, I mean, my employees are working in hotels and flats, and luckily they feel privileged because they're safe. And last Friday, I was having a conversation with our team because we have daily meetings, and our project manager, she's like, so what are you going to do this weekend? And I said, oh, we're doing a little celebration, or, we're going out for a little date night. And she goes, oh, are you celebrating anything? I said, well, kind of, my husband just got a promotion and a new job at work, and he got a raise. So we're kind of, we're celebrating that. And she's like, oh, I'm so excited for you. I hope you have a wonderful time. And she goes, we're going to be doing a little celebrating of our own. I said, oh yeah, what happened? And she's like, oh, are you okay?
No. I'm waiting for this line that's coming.
Oh no, she's like, oh yeah, we just got an apartment. We're not living in a hotel anymore.
Right. Yeah.
And I was like, God, now I feel like shit. I'm going to a comedy show. I'm probably going to drink whiskey all weekend. And it's just like, it makes me hurt that I can't do more. So when they ask me like, hey, like, can you just keep paying their wages? It's like naturally, why wouldn't I? Like,
because there are places that won't.
I know.
Places that won't. And that's, it speaks to your integrity that you're like,
I want to do more than that. Like,
right.
I want to find out these people that have the Airbnbs, because like, I want to go and like buy all of their like weeks of out, like
whatever you can do to help out.
I can't afford it, but I want to do it.
Right.
And like, I just want to help, because I feel like horrible. It's one of those things where you feel horrible being so lucky and grateful. And
yeah, and it's it's the survivor's remorse concept, and like we've got it really, really good here where we are. We don't have to suffer through things.
Yeah. I mean, we have our own things. Everybody has their own things, their own demons.
Right.
But it's a different level.
Yeah.
And it's hard.
It really is. And so we're almost at 3 hours, and I do have to cut off at some point.
No, we do. We have to stop. We can't go all night.
Like I could. I absolutely could. Like the conversation will flow there, and we'll have to do this again for sure. I truly appreciate you coming on and doing this. I
hope you answered your 5 to 8 questions.
Yeah, no, there's the 5 to 8 questions plus the stack of post-it notes right here.
No. Like that's what I look like with to-do lists.
This is all the things that we actually covered. Like everything was covered. There was not anything that was missed. Everything was covered. There obviously will be more anytime you come across something else that you want to talk about, you've got something coming up, if you've got a new single barrel pick that you want to promote, I will absolutely show it to the 14 people that are going to listen to this on a podcast and the 40 people that are going to watch it on YouTube or whatever. I appreciate you being here. I'm going to dump you out. I'm going to hit the outro. I appreciate you being here tonight.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
For sure.
I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. So thanks for joining me for tonight or today or whenever you happen to catch this. I hope you find this episode entertaining. If you did, please leave a review and hop over to Morgan's Instagram, to her website, whatever. Pick up one of her single barrels if you can. Also, leave a comment if possible. Hit me up on social media at Twitter or Instagram using EmbellishPod. Give me a follow so you can keep up with what's going on here. I can be found at www.embellishpod.com with all of my links, accounts, contact details, whatever else that you're looking for. Oh no, that we're getting hit again by my folks over here on this. Give me just a second to remove them. All right. I'll be back again next week with another episode. So until then, cheers and thanks for hanging out.